For some folks, seeing those two lines on a pregnancy test is like hitting the jackpot. For others, it's more like a kick in the gut. And for our main gal, well, it's the latter. Just a month ago, she was kicking it with her buddies, Miran and Minwook, munching on pizza and shooting the breeze. Then, out of the blue, they drop the big news: they're dating. And just like that, their first day as a couple was official. Even though she felt like she'd taken a punch to the gut, she slapped on a smile and tossed out her congrats. After all, they were friends, right? The three of them, Miran, Minwook, and her, had been tight since their middle school days. In fact, she and Minwook go way back to their sandbox days, with Miran joining the gang later on. But honestly, they'd been a trio for so long that it was hard to remember who became buddies with whom first. She'd always figured they'd stick together, just the three musketeers. But hearing about their relationship, she felt like she'd been sucker-punched. She'd kept her feelings for Minwook under wraps, not wanting to mess up their perfect trio. But now, she wished she'd spilled her guts to him when she had the chance. Seeing the two of them together, completely oblivious to her heartache, felt like a betrayal. She knew there was no fairy tale ending for her one-sided love. She wasn't about to throw caution to the wind and have a random one-night stand. But then Miran, with her trademark oversharing is caring attitude, started bragging about Minwook's bedroom skills. That got her thinking. Why couldn't she have a bit of that fun? So, she decided to hit the town, ready to wave goodbye to 27 years of untouched innocence. Fast forward to now, and she's staring at a positive pregnancy test when Miran barges in. Quick as a cat, she tries to cover it up, claiming she's exercising for stamina. But Miran's no fool. She spots the test and demands answers. In a whirlwind of confusion, our gal spills the beans about her one-night stand, leaving Miran feeling guilty for suggesting the bar where it all went down. But there's no time for self-blame. Miran insists they head to the clinic after work. Later that day, Hayen walks into the clinic sporting a new look, almost incognito. Miran, puzzled, asks her about the getup. Hayen explains she needs to keep a low profile, given her status as a role model. However, Miran points out that her disguise is more conspicuous than her regular attire. She reminds Hayen that there's no shame in visiting a gynecologist and urges her to ditch the glasses. It turns out Miran anticipated Hayen's anxiety and chose this upscale clinic to avoid any awkward encounters. Hayen appreciates Miran's thoughtfulness, but her gratitude is cut short when she spots Minwook at the clinic. Shocked, she questions Miran, who nonchalantly reveals she invited him, believing in the power of collective thinking. Hayen protests, but Miran dismisses her concerns, reminding her of their long-standing friendship. Soon after, Miran brings up the topic of the man responsible for Hayen's pregnancy, encouraging her to find him. As they discuss, Miran spots a girl in a school uniform resembling Hayen's students, accompanied by a man. Hayen is taken aback, having been assured of privacy at this clinic. On closer inspection, she recognizes the girl, Se-hyun Kong. Despite Miran's attempt to defuse the situation, Hayen is concerned that the man might be exploiting Se-hyun. She approaches them, offering her support to the visibly confused Se-hyun. Things escalate quickly when Hayen confronts the man, only to freeze on realizing he is the one responsible for her pregnancy. In the heat of the moment, Miran and Minwook sprint towards Hayen to put a lid on the brewing drama. But as they close in, they notice Hayen's intense stare at a man and wonder what's cooking. Hayen, jittery and wide-eyed, quickly rushes over to them and spills the beans. That man is her baby daddy. Miran, all fired up, makes a beeline for him but is intercepted by her cooler-headed boyfriend, Minwook. Caught off guard, the man turns to the young girl, Se-hyun, asking who the fiery lady is. Se-hyun reveals that Hayen is her homeroom teacher and introduces the man as her uncle, Do-jun Kong. Sensing Miran's skepticism, Se-hyun assures her that she's got nothing shady going on with her uncle, even offering to show legal documents if needed. Do-jun, trying to smooth things over, invites Hayen to come closer for a proper introduction. Reluctantly, she steps forward, apologizing and quickly shifting her attention back to Hayen, curious about her presence at the clinic. Hayen explains that her family is a bit unusual, which prompts Do-jun to chime in, teasing about the normalcy of her getting a sibling. A flustered Hayen pleads with Haewon to keep this hush-hush at school. Internally kicking herself for jumping to conclusions and reminding herself that not everyone's life revolves around pregnancy like hers. Haewon answers Hayen's query about her clinic visit by pointing at her friends, jokingly referring to them as an engaged couple. Just as Haewon is in the middle of her tall tale, the nurse calls her name for her appointment. Alarm bells ring, but her quick-thinking friends step in, pretending they are the ones here for a checkup, saving Haewon from an awkward reveal. As the clock ticks away, they all find themselves camped in the waiting room. Haewon is off playing doctor-patient, leaving Miran to shoot the breeze with Hayen. She nudges Hayen, asking if she's got someplace to be. Hayen, however, insists on sticking around for her teacher. Meanwhile, Miran is sneakily sizing up Do-jun Kong. Initially, she feared he'd be some lowlife, but he's surprisingly well-to-do. Plus, he's easy on the eyes and dressed to the nines. Is this guy loaded, she wonders. She's intrigued by his nonchalant attitude towards bumping into his one-night stand at a gyno clinic. She catches him deep in thought and itches to pick his brain. But she reins in her curiosity, for now. Lost in his thoughts, Do-jun Kong is trying to piece together the puzzle. Could she really be my one-night stand, he ponders. That was the first and only time he had ever done that, but boy, was it memorable. He remembers waking up feeling fantastic until he spotted the 2 bills she had left behind. It made him laugh at first, then stung his pride. Was that all he was worth to her? He spent ages trying to track her down, to no avail. And now, here she was, teaching his niece. He sneaks a peek at Minwook, dismissing him as her husband. But one question keeps nagging him. Why is she visiting a gynecologist? Meanwhile, inside the doc's office, Haewon is swallowing the news of her 6-week pregnancy. The doctor, oblivious to her solo visit, casually asks if her hubby tagged along. Haewon's brain is a whirlwind of worry as she tries to figure out what to tell the doctor. But before she can get a word in, the doc interrupts her train of thought. We don't do abortions here, she says. If that's what you're after, you should look elsewhere. Haewon's jaw drops. She fires back, calling out the doc for her rudeness. Sure. She's an unmarried mom-to-be, but that doesn't give the doc the right to throw the A-word around so casually. Annoyed and feeling judged, she exits the office. Upon leaving, she hears her student Hayen calling out her name. She turns around and is surprised to see Do-jun Kong still hanging around. Miran and Hayen hurry over, full of concern. Haewon puts on a brave face and tells them she was there for a routine checkup, thanking them for their worry. Just when she thinks she's successfully dodged the bullet, a nurse pops out, reminding her not to forget her baby's ultrasound picture. The unexpected announcement leaves Hayen and Do-jun in shock. Later, at a cafe, Haewon and Do-jun sit in awkward silence. She gulps down a glass of water, trying to shake off her nerves. When Do-jun points out her anxiety, she quickly denies it. As she tries to explain her situation, referring to him as Hayen's uncle, he cuts her off and corrects her, it's Do-jun Kong. She wonders if he's making fun of her. She pleads with him to separate her personal life from her professional one, assuring him she's a dedicated teacher. As she rambles on, Do-jun remains silent, leaving her feeling like she's the only one at fault. Exhausted, she gets ready to leave, but as she does, Do-jun drops the dreaded question, is it my child? Haewon quickly shuts down Do-jun's suspicions, assuring him that he is not the father of her unborn child. His surprise is evident, but he suggests they continue their conversation and get to the bottom of things. Despite her initial hesitation, Haewon agrees to sit back down and discuss the matter further. Do-jun can't help but question her story. She plans to marry another man, yet she was intimate with him. And now she's checking for pregnancy with her friends in tow. Something doesn't add up. But Hayen dismisses his doubts, asserting that regardless of how her story appears, it's none of his concern. Confused and somewhat frustrated, Do-jun proposes they take some time to process everything and meet again the next day. Before Hayen can respond, he informs her that her friends are waiting outside and abruptly leaves. Outside, Miran and Minwook await Hayen in their car. They receive a call from Hayen, informing them she's visiting her mom and will head home afterward. Knowing about Hayen's strained relationship with her mother, Minwook offers to pick her up. But Miran quickly interjects, reminding Minwook that his focus should be on her, his girlfriend, not Hayen. Minwook tries to explain that his concern for Hayen stems from their long-standing friendship, even before he started dating Miran. But Miran remains unconvinced. On reaching her mother's place, Hayen is met with a frosty reception. Rather than asking about her well-being, her mother questions her sudden visit. Hayen deflects the question but internally wishes her mother had shown more concern. She attempts to break the icy silence by asking about her father, but her mother offers no response. Hayen throws a curveball, asking if her mom still harbors resentment for her dad. She then starts to chat about her half-sibling, but her mom quickly shuts it down. "Why are you talking about her like she's family?" she snaps, warning Hayen not to equate herself with another woman's daughter. It's clear that Hayen's step-siblings aren't her mother's favorites. An outsider might mistake their conversation as a sign of a loving relationship. But the reality is far from it. Hayen's mom has always been distant and unaffectionate. Hayen ponders her reason for visiting. Perhaps she was seeking advice about her unplanned pregnancy. But she already knows her mom's stance on unwanted pregnancies. She'll likely tell her to terminate it. With this in mind, Hayen switches gears, asking her mom about her feelings towards her dad and whether they ever loved each other. Her mom senses Hayen is holding back something and prods her to spill it. Hayen finally confesses her fears. Does her mom hate her because she hates her dad? Is she blamed for ruining her mom's life? Surprisingly, her mom admits that accepting an unwanted pregnancy isn't easy, but insists she provided everything Hayen needed. This brings Hayen to tears. She accuses her mom of never showing love and apologizes for the unexpected visit. As she heads for the door, her mom calls after her, asking if she's okay. But Hayen leaves without a word. The next day, we see Do-jun Kong at work, lunch in hand. His colleague notices his distracted demeanor and asks what's up. Do-jun drops a bombshell: he's getting married. He wants a May wedding and asks his friend to clear his schedule. His friend thinks he's joking until Do-jun asks for help finding a new home suitable for raising a child and booking a wedding venue. Realizing Do-jun is serious, his friend asks questions. Did he go on a blind date? Is the bride-to-be from a wealthy family? But all his inquiries are met with negative responses, leaving him stumped. Next, his friend asks if the bride-to-be is the hot new model they just signed. After all, she did ask to meet Do-jun Kong personally. But Do-jun shakes his head. Nope, not her. This answer leaves his buddy scratching his head in confusion. To add to the surprise, Do-jun casually mentions he needs to visit Daehan High School tomorrow to meet the mother of his child. His friend's jaw drops. Wait, you're gonna be a dad? Do-jun apologizes for springing the news so suddenly and explains that the mother is a teacher at the school. Switching scenes, we find Hayen at work. Mentally worn out from all the thinking she's been doing. So deep in thought she doesn't even hear her boss calling her until her colleague nudges her. Her boss isn't pleased, criticizing her lack of attention during a brief 20-minute staff meeting. He even questions how she plans to teach if she can't stay focused for such a short span. The meeting ends with the introduction of a new student teacher who'll be assisting Hayen. As she's processing this news, her colleague spots her doodling Do-jul 2 lines on her notepad. The colleague teases her, saying it sounds like a name she knows. Hayen dismisses it, saying she just remembered to include 2 lines in her teaching notes. But her boss isn't amused by the chatter and chides her again for talking during the meeting. He wraps up by announcing a staff dinner that evening and expects everyone to attend. After the meeting, the new student teacher, Ji-hoon Lee, approaches Hee-won. He's a looker, and Hee-won's female colleague can't help but swoon. As they walk back together, Ji-hoon mentions how much he missed Hee-won and teases her for not appearing thrilled to see him. She quickly sets boundaries, asking him to address her formally at work and be careful around the students, especially the girls. Ji-hoon just laughs it off, saying she's still the same jealous Hee-won from their college days. We learn that Hee-won and Ji-hoon go way back. They met during their third year of college when Ji-hoon, a first year, was already a campus heartthrob. With both parents in education, a second-place class ranking, and his good looks, he was always the center of attention. Everyone noticed him, except Hee-won. They were both in liberal arts class. Hee-won once lent Ji-hoon a pen. To show his gratitude, Ji-hoon returned the favor by treating Hee-won to lunch. It was a simple gesture, nothing more, and after that lunch, Ji-hoon vanished from lectures, fading like a forgotten dream. However, Ji-hoon had an uncanny habit of using Hee-won's name as a get-out-of-jail-free card to escape clingy girlfriends. Bewildered and annoyed, Hee-won confronted him, demanding an explanation. With a smirk, Ji-hoon confessed that he found Hee-won unshakable and hence, the perfect scapegoat. He justified his actions, claiming it was exhausting fending off love-struck women who mistook his kindness for interest. When he insinuated she was jealous, Hee-won's fuse blew. Miran, joining the fray, landed a punch on Ji-hoon's face. That day, on the campus green, Ji-hoon was schooled by two fierce ladies. The incident fizzled out, without further ado. Ji-hoon was soon drafted into the army, and Hee-won graduated, thinking she'd seen the last of him. Fast forward to present day, they're standing in front of her class as she introduces Ji-hoon as their new student teacher. After instructing her student, Se-hyun, to meet her post-lunch, she advises Ji-hoon to explore the school or prep for his class during her free period. Lost in thought, Hee-won's mind drifts to her recent conversation with Do-jun Kang. She's amusingly reminded of his insistence on his full name, which oddly rhymes with Do-jul. Suddenly, she spots a man resembling Do-jun. On closer inspection, she realizes it's him. Shocked, she swiftly grabs his hand, dragging him to a secluded corner. She demands to know why he's at her school. To which he calmly replies that they had plans to meet. He asks her to release his hand and advises her to refrain from her impromptu sprints. She proposes they reconvene after her work, but he insists on a quick chat due to time constraints. Then, out of the blue, he pops the suggestion, "Let's get married." This revelation leaves Hee-won reeling. They barely know each other aside from that single, shared night. As she proposes a more in-depth conversation later, she hears the principal nearby, looking for her and Do-jun Kang. Thinking fast, she clings to Do-jun, pretending she nearly had a tumble and he saved her from falling. She plays it off like she's directing him elsewhere. When the principal asks Do-jun for confirmation, he backs her up, saying he has no intention of going anywhere else. This makes Hee-won question if they'd crossed paths before. In a surprising turn of events, he sends the principal ahead, asking for a private word with Hee-won. Suddenly, she feels woozy, realizing he's the school's chairman. Is she about to be fired? And why is he talking about taking responsibility and proposing marriage? Is he assuming she's after his money because of the baby? Despite the confusion, she knows something isn't adding up. All she can think of is getting back to prep for her next class. But Do-jun isn't done talking. Misunderstanding his intentions, she tells him she plans to resign before the first period ends, ensuring she'll never cross paths with him again. She asserts her intentions of raising Do-jul, a nickname for the baby meaning 2 lines, by herself. Leaving a puzzled Do-jun behind, she strides off, leaving him trying to make sense of what just transpired. As Do-jun saunters back to his workspace, his secretary gives him a quizzical look. After all, tonight's meeting has been in the diary for over a week, and it's his job to keep schedules running like clockwork. However, Do-jun explains, with a hint of mischief in his eyes, that the principal's heartfelt plea was too persuasive to resist. Now, the secretary is left with the tricky task of canceling a week-old dinner appointment at the drop of a hat. With a chuckle, Do-jun teases his secretary, claiming he's the second-best smooth talker in the country. He's confident in his secretary's ability to work this out. The secretary retorts, suggesting Do-jun, the supposed number one persuader, handle the dinner cancellation himself. After all, Do-jun's usually so rigid that he wouldn't even take a bathroom break if it wasn't in his schedule. So, what's brought about this sudden change? Their banter is interrupted when Do-jun spots Hayen. He curiously asks his secretary if Do-jun sounds like Do-jul. The secretary, puzzled by the question, gets a vague response and a reminder about the dinner rescheduling. Still, he can't help but mention the awkwardness between the chairman and Hayen, hinting at a one-sided marriage proposal. Do-jun brushes it off, attributing it to Hayen's shyness. Later, in the office, Hayen and Hayen share a heart-to-heart. Hayen probes about any unusual behaviors from her uncle the previous day. Hayen assures her that her uncle is a meticulous planner and not prone to spontaneous actions. This leaves Hayen pondering if their night together was part of his plan. In a surprising turn, Hayen reveals that her sibling's birth mother isn't her own. She also spills the beans about Do-jun's age, he's 34. Hayen is relieved to finally have a piece of the puzzle. After sharing her family's secrets, Hayen proposes they swap secrets. The young girl seems glad to have someone to confide in and assures Hayen she won't judge. Touched by her maturity, Hayen thanks her and wonders if this level-headedness runs in the family. Despite her pregnancy-induced exhaustion, she's left marveling at Hayen's poise. As Hayen exits the office, she's startled by a friend who practically yanks her outside. Hollering about big news. It turns out, high school heartthrobs Taewoo and Ki-young are set to face off in a one-on-one basketball game. Hayen shrugs, unimpressed until her friend mentions that this isn't just any game. The two boys had a spat over a girl. Now, that's some classic teenage drama. Curious, Hayen probes for more details. Apparently, Ki-young was talking about some girl like she was his personal possession when Taewoo stepped in. Given Taewoo's laid-back nature and distaste for violence, he proposed settling the matter on the basketball court instead of a brawl. As for the girl in question, Hayen's friend brushes it off, more interested in the showdown than the damsel in this drama. Her friend, smitten with Taewoo, considers Hayen lucky to have him as a neighbor. But Hayen sees it differently. To her, Taewoo is far from the charming boy everyone else sees. She knows his lazy, manipulative side and his cunning ability to exploit others' weaknesses. Even her own father didn't believe her when she complained about him. Yet, she sees a silver lining in this situation. If Taewoo gets a girlfriend, maybe she'll finally be free of him, a thought that makes her shout freedom, startling her friend. The game begins, and Taewoo casually tosses his jacket on Hayen's head, earning approving whispers from the crowd. However, she overhears some students speculating she's the cause of the guys' feud. Annoyed, she hands the jacket to her friend and leaves without explanation. Walking away, she believes Taewoo only interfered because she was the subject of the dispute. She anticipates rumors and misunderstandings, considering her plan to speed things up by finding him a girlfriend herself. Meanwhile, the new student teacher approaches the crowd, sitting next to Hayen's friend. He introduces himself, and she recognizes him. He thanks her and asks for her name. Upon hearing Raniku, he compliments her, leaving her starstruck. However, his real motive is to learn more about Hayen and Hayen's conversation. Even if he doesn't get any info, he figures it can't hurt to make a new friend. This leaves us wondering, just what kind of teacher is he, really? Later that day, the teachers roll into an expensive restaurant for a dinner hosted by the principal. Their eyes widen at the sight of the fancy place, and they can't help but assume the chairman must have footed the bill. As they settle in, Ji-hoon asks Hayen if he can snag the seat next to her. But she playfully shoos him away, suggesting he finds another spot. Luckily, another colleague steps in and saves the day, allowing him to sit. Just as they're getting comfortable, the chairman strolls in, causing a ripple of excitement through the room. Hayen nearly chokes on her drink, her surprise plain on her face. Even Ji-hoon, who's been observing her, checks if she's okay. The principal kicks off the dinner with a surprise announcement. Instead of his usual lengthy speech, they've invited the chairman to say a few words. His speech is short and sweet, leaving everyone relieved that they didn't have to endure the principal's usual rambling. Throughout dinner, Hayen and Do-jun barely touch their food. Do-jun keeps glancing towards the entrance and asks questions about Ji-hoon, the new teacher. On learning that he's a student teacher from Myungwoon University, the chairman wonders if Hayen has a thing for younger guys. Ji-hoon is summoned to the chairman's table. After some small talk about college life, the chairman starts grilling him with intense questions. He then pours Ji-hoon a drink, giving him an icy stare that leaves Ji-hoon wondering if he stepped on a landmine. Meanwhile, Hayen finishes her meal and prepares to leave. But not before sharing some juicy gossip about Ji-hoon with a colleague who seems smitten by him. She reveals that Ji-hoon prefers motels to trips and has a wild side. Her colleague bursts into laughter, claiming she wouldn't mind if Ji-hoon were a wolf. Hayen tries to convince her about Ji-hoon's lack of principles, but her warnings fall on deaf ears. Chuckling, Hayen waves goodbye and heads out. Outside, the spring chill catches Hayen off guard. As she's shivering, the Do-jun sneaks up on her, asking if she's heading home. She jumps, startled, but quickly composes herself and confirms. He offers her a ride, which she politely declines. He then drapes his jacket over her shoulders, causing her to jump again. He teases her about her skittishness, and she counters that he keeps surprising her. With a laugh, he insists she keeps the jacket since she looks cold. So he asks her what she was doing there, and she explains that she didn't know where to go because she got lost. However, he mentions that he has an excellent sense of direction and he's great at finding paths. He adds that he's so skilled that he can make paths where there weren't any previously. As they stand there, he nudges her towards his car, hinting that it's warmer there. Just when she's about to refuse, he leans in and confesses that he wouldn't have braved the cold if it wasn't for her. Smooth operator, isn't he? Their chit-chat continues as Do-jun Kong suggests again that they move the conversation to his car. Once inside the car, he teases her, asking if she at least knows her address, despite her lousy navigation skills. Then he drops the big question, has she considered his morning marriage proposal? Her answer is as swift as it is firm, nope, not marrying you, Mr. Chairman. And there he goes again, insisting on his name. Hayen, puzzled, asks if his name holds that much importance for him. He responds, clarifying that he's just reminding her since she called him Do-jul earlier. She quickly corrects him, stating Do-jul is the baby's nickname. This sparks a debate. He argues he should have been part of the nickname decision since half the baby is his. But Hayen denies the baby is his. The argument heats up, leading him to pull over and challenge her to prove he's not the father. Plus, he's not happy with Do-jul out of all the cute nicknames available, why that one? They bicker until he finally accepts the nickname, mainly because Hayen slips and refers to the baby as their baby. She quickly backtracks, not wanting to burden him with fatherhood. He's hurt and insists on the marriage proposal again, but she keeps declining. He asks her for a solid reason for her refusal. And she says they don't know each other well enough. He disagrees, listing all the things he knows about her, including some intimate details that make her cringe. She pleads with him to skip the steamy parts, arguing they don't know each other well enough for marriage. But he thinks they can learn, especially since they seem to gel quite well on certain topics. She counters, saying a family should be built on love, not lust. To her surprise, he suggests they start loving each other now. Do-jun then floats the idea of a first date since they already had a sleepover together, and he's popped the question. But Hayen is not so easily swayed. Do-jun then dives into his spiel about wanting a complete family for their baby, Do-jul. He wants the kid to experience love from both parents and thinks marriage is the way to go. Hayen, though, insists on marrying for love, not convenience. So Do-jun suggests they start dating to see if love blossoms. This time, Hayen agrees, with a stern caveat: agreeing to a date does not equate to accepting his proposal. As she leaves, she notes to herself that Do-jun seems like a guy who always gets what he wants. When Hayen arrives home, she finds her friend Miran in a tiff with Minwook. After scolding Miran for leaving poor Minwook out in the cold, Miran pulls her aside to drop a bombshell: she's figured out who the father of Hayen's baby is. The chairman of Hayen's school and VP of the Daehan group, no less. But Hayen seems unfazed. She knew already. In the process of spilling the beans, Miran also accidentally reveals a secret outing she'd kept from Minwook. This sparks a rift between the couple, and Minwook asks Miran for a private chat. Once alone, he opens up about his relationship with Hayen, explaining how they grew up together and how she's like a sister to him. He assures Miran that he'll change his protective habits towards Hayen if they're hurting her. But Miran is left scratching her head, wondering why Minwook is suddenly sharing all this. He reveals that her silent treatment has been affecting his work and that he's been waiting outside all day to talk to her. After unloading, he asks if she's done being mad and proposes to show her something. He stands up, announcing he's going to kiss her. Miran is taken aback, reminding him that Hayen is in the next room. But Minwook isn't deterred. It's just a kiss, after all. But one thing leads to another, and they emerge from the room looking rather disheveled. The next day, Hayen and Do-jun are off on their date, with Miran and Minwook tailing them in full spy mode. Do-jun, ever the gentleman, had invited her friends, but Hayen told him they're a bit odd. And boy, she wasn't kidding. After a thorough grilling about Do-jun from Miran and Minwook, they've taken it upon themselves to investigate the potential couple. Meanwhile, Hayen can't help but notice Do-jun's transformation. Gone is the corporate tycoon look, and in its place is a more relaxed, casual vibe. She's surprised, but finds it refreshing and, dare she say, attractive. In the midst of their chat, Do-jun casually asks about her age. She's 27, she replies. As he's about to share his, she playfully interrupts, revealing she already knows, thanks to Se-hyun's little chit-chat. This prompts Do-jun to tease her about doing her own investigation. But she assures him it was all part of a conversation about Se-hyun's family. And oh, by the way, he's 4 years younger than Se-hyun's dad. As they continue their stroll, Do-jun decides to drop the formalities. He wants to call her Hayen instead of the usual stiff Ms. Jang. She's taken aback, but gives him a go-ahead with a hint of hesitation. He then nudges her to follow suit, suggesting she calls him Appa instead of Mr. Kong. She playfully counters, opting for Do-jun. Suddenly, Do-jun veers towards Miran and Minwook's not-so-secret hiding spot. He greets them cheerfully, inviting them to join the movie date. They quickly agree, making it a double date of sorts. Once inside the theater, Hayen notices it's just them. She asks if Do-jun bought all the tickets, but he shrugs it off, explaining he just requested an empty theater. It dawns on her that he's the VP of the Daehan group, which owns the theater chain. Oh, the perks of being rich. He checks if she's comfy and if there's a movie she'd like to see. Before she can answer, Minwook jumps in, listing her preferences. He suggests to Do-jun that such details matter in a relationship. But Miran pulls him back, reminding him that Hayen can handle herself. Soon, a waiter pops in to check if they need anything else. Do-jun orders mango juice, cheese popcorn, and the most popular movie. What a guy. As the flick rolls on, Hayen's eyes light up. This is the movie she's been dying to watch. But things take a turn when a brutal scene unfolds. Do-jun Kong, in a flash, covers her eyes, babbling about how this film is too harsh for their unborn kiddo. He's protective, sure. But it's getting on her nerves. Just as she's about to protest, he leans in close, so close they could kiss. But they don't. They pull back, leaving an awkward silence hanging in the air. This moment triggers a memory in Hayen, a memory of a night when Doo Kong was more than just a friend. The end credits roll and Minwook receives a message. The logo he's been meticulously crafting is ready for review. He invites Miran to lend her discerning eye, as he values her artistic input. This leaves Hayen and Doo alone, and sensing an opportune moment, Doo suggests they decamp to a nearby cafe. Over coffee, Doo inquires about Hayen's thoughts on the film. She admits feeling saddened by the protagonist's inability to conquer the mountain, a sentiment that prompts a light-hearted proposition from Doo. In a quirky move, Doo offers to be her hero, even asking what he'd need to do to earn that title. She laughs it off, pleading for him to stop teasing her. Then, out of the blue, he drops a bombshell. He wants to know if she has feelings for their friend, Minwook. Her silence tells him all he needs to know. She's got a thing for Minwook. But before she can spill her heart out, Doo cuts her off. He insists it doesn't matter who she's crushing on. They've got bigger fish to fry, like being responsible adults and creating a happy nest for their little bun in the oven, Doo then lays down the law. They've got to see each other 4 times a week, juggling their schedules as needed. She nods in agreement, but inside, she's thinking, he's asking questions, but he's already decided the answers. Where's my say in all this? Plus, this new Doo seems different. It makes her wonder who the real him is. Lost in her thoughts, she snapped back to reality when Doo drops another bombshell. He wants to know if she slept with him to get back at Minwook. He adds that while they're together, he's going to give it his all and expects the same from her. No more drama with Minwook. She assures him that she is already working on moving past her feelings for Minwook. So, he doesn't need to worry about any love triangle shenanigans. 2 weeks and 6 dates later, Hayen finds herself soaking up the weather outdoors. Her rendezvous with Doo has been a pleasant mix of dinner dates and leisurely drives. He's been nothing short of a gentleman, thoughtful and considerate at every turn. But something gnaws at her. Their relationship seems stalled. It doesn't feel like they're making headway. If they were just any other couple, it would be different. But their dates feel more like business meetings than romantic outings. There are no spontaneous texts or cutesy emojis. No "I miss you" messages. Adding to her unease is the stark difference in their financial statuses. She's finding it hard to adjust to his wealth. Marriage? She's not sure if she could ever seriously consider it. Lost in thought, she's interrupted by Hayen, who wonders why she's outside instead of in class. As they chat, a man strolls by with a ball. Hayen teases that the gym teacher has a crush on her. But Hayen quickly shuts down the gossip, reminding her it's not cool to spread rumors without knowing the facts. She then reminds her that she had promised to share her problems, but never did. Could it be a trust issue? Hayen quickly reassures her that trust isn't the problem. She brings up Taewoo Jang, a third-year student. Hayen knows him alright, as the one who has the hots for Hayen. Hayen looks taken aback. Who spilled the beans? Hayen shrugs, saying she just put 2 and 2 together from seeing them biking to and from school together. Now, it's Hayen's turn to play the rumor police. She clarifies that she bought a bike to enjoy some solitude, but Taewoo decided to get one too. She then asks Hayen for advice on how to shake someone off. Is she talking about Taewoo? Hayen seems thrilled that Hayen is the first one to ever insinuate that Taewoo could be a bother, even if unintentionally. This gives Hayen hope and determination, although Hayen seems a bit puzzled by her reaction. Their heart-to-heart is interrupted by Ji-hoon. He tells Hayen it's time to prepare for class, and Hayen excuses herself. When Ji-hoon addresses Hayen as Sunbae instead of him as Jang, she warns him not to address her at all and walks off. Ji-hoon quips that she's leaving him with limited options and wonders how long she can keep up her feisty attitude. Meanwhile, Doo Kong is at his desk, but his mind is elsewhere, specifically on Hayen. He recalls the first day he laid eyes on her, a day when everything seemed to magically align. His last meeting wrapped up half an hour early, giving him an unexpected window of free time. He contemplated grabbing a drink, open to the possibility of company but equally content with solitude. That night, he felt spontaneous and unshackled. Enter Hayen with her proposal. He had no choice but to lend an ear. His initial impression of her was audacious and bold. Her audacity left him so flabbergasted that he lost his chance to decline, surrendering instead to curiosity about her plans. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, stretching over an hour. She wasn't coy, instead exuding intelligence and warmth. Bold yet shy, her sparkling eyes hanging on to his every word made him feel cherished. When he finally heard her proposal, he found himself intrigued rather than repelled. Looking back, he can't help but wonder if their encounter was part of a larger, unseen plan. He genuinely felt a connection, both physically and emotionally. Quite the unforgettable meet-cute, wouldn't you say? But then, his secretary snaps him out of his thoughts, nudging him back to the grind. Unexpectedly, he throws her a curveball. Am I unlikable? Caught off guard yet armed with a litany of responses, she begins to list off his less appealing qualities, only to be cut short by Do-jun. That wasn't what he meant. She probes further, asking if he's unlikable as a man. The secretary notes his unusual behavior and asks if something's awry. Do-jun mirrors her question, wondering aloud what might be wrong with him. He likens himself to an umbrella after the rain, once useful, now merely a hindrance. His secretary, connecting the dots, asks if Hayen has called him useless or in the way. But he quickly clarifies that those weren't her exact words. He then asks his secretary if he appears old to her, sparking speculation that Hayen might have made such a remark. The conversation veers towards whether Hayen genuinely likes the chairman and if he's tried to win her over with gifts. After all, using his wealth to pique her interest seems like an easy solution. Do-jun shares that he's tried to surprise her with some items he's noticed her eyeing. But each attempt was met with discomfort. His wealth could buy anything she wants, but material possessions don't seem to sway her. So, he pondered over how he could accumulate some points in her book. He even sought advice from his niece Hayen on Hayen's preferences. And the answer? Spicy rice cakes. The secretary can't help but express a tinge of I told you so, reminding her boss that he'd once advised him to date more and work less. The idea of gifting spicy rice cakes in a relationship was a definite faux pas in his book. But before the secretary can add anything more, Do-jun springs to his feet with a surprising announcement. He's off to get some spicy rice cakes, meeting be damned. After all, he has an adept secretary whom he trusts implicitly to juggle his schedule. So, Do-jun drives straight to the school, hoping to catch a glimpse of Hayen. And there she is, but this time, she's with another man. The story then takes us back to before Do-jun's arrival. We see Hayen wrapping up a call with him, setting up yet another meeting. Once done, she heads back to her office. As she walks in, she hears the principal berating one of her students. She observes that he seems particularly harsh on her homeroom kids. Could it be a hangover from last year's incident? She ponders. Ji-hoon steps in to defend the student under fire, but the principal quickly rebuffs him, reminding him of his role as a student teacher. The principal further implies that such mishaps are expected from Ms. Hayen Jang's class. On hearing this, Hayen confronts the principal, defending her student's actions as harmless and devoid of malice. However, she promises to sternly warn the student, RANIQ, against doodling on quiz papers in the future. After making RANI apologize once more and instructing her to come see her later, Hayen also offers an apology, assuring the principal that such an incident won't reoccur. The principal scoffs at the idea of a mere apology being sufficient and then goes on to criticize the arrogance he perceives in both students and teachers. This remark riles up Hayen, who calls him out for his blatant disrespect and accuses him of holding a grudge over a past incident. Another teacher intervenes to defuse the escalating tension. As the principal storms off, he grumbles about his 20-year teaching career, expressing disbelief at being spoken to in such a manner. As Hayen exits the school, the teacher who had stepped in earlier approaches her. Grateful. She thanks him for his intervention, but he brushes it off, even apologizing for siding with the principal, just to keep the peace. Out of the blue, he asks if she's dating anyone and suggests they grab dinner if she's single. He also mentions that the gym teacher seems to have a soft spot for her. To nip the conversation in the bud, she quickly says she's already seeing someone, though she still appreciates his invitation. Just as she continues her stroll, she hears Do-jun calling her name from afar, causing her heart to skip a beat. His tone hints at an undercurrent of jealousy. Mr. Shin, the other teacher, sees Chairman Do-jun Kong calling out to Hayen and starts wondering if he's the mystery man she's dating. Before he can get an answer, Hayen takes off in a flash towards Do-jun. Surprisingly, Do-jun also breaks into a run to meet her halfway, leaving her puzzled as she was already heading his way. Upon reaching her, Do-jun wraps his arms around her, chastising her for running while pregnant. This unexpected display leaves bystanders whispering and speculating about a possible movie shoot. Overwhelmed, Hayen pleads with him to let go due to the growing audience. Once they're safely in the car, she quizzes him on why he'd call out and wave, given his well-known status at school. He admits that the thought hadn't crossed his mind until she brought it up. The conversation then veers to a magazine article praising his sharp intellect, prompting him to tease her about still reading up on him. He also curiously asks about Mr. Shin, the teacher he saw her with earlier. Hayen explains that Mr. Shin had assisted her with something and had casually asked about her relationship status. She reassures Do-jun that she informed him that she was seeing someone. A seemingly jealous Do-jun, however, can't help but wonder why Mr. Shin would be interested in her love life. But Hayen dismisses his concern, stating that she can't possibly know Mr. Shin's motives. Do-jun then asks Hayen to remain committed to him until she makes her final decision, which she assures him she has by declaring she's seeing someone. As they drive off, she inquires about their destination. With a smirk, Do-jun reveals they're off to have spicy rice cakes. Later, Sehyun and her buddy Rani are ambling out of school when Sehyun questions her friend about the math test stunt. Was she trying to ruffle the teacher's feathers? Rani shrugs it off, not realizing the principal lacked a sense of humor. As they saunter on, they notice the buzz among the students. The gossip mill is spinning about Ms. Hayen Jang spotted in a cozy embrace with an unidentified guy. Eager for some gossip, they eavesdrop to gather more juicy details about their homeroom teacher. Just then, Ji-hoon walks by, nudging the students to head home. Spotting him, Rani quickly drags her friend towards him. She thanks him for his attempt to help in the teacher's office, despite his limited influence. Trying to lift their spirits, he suggests treating them to some spicy rice cakes before they part ways. Sehyun politely declines, but just as Rani tries to persuade her to accept, she remembers she left the test papers behind. With a quick wave, she dashes back to retrieve them, leaving Sehyun alone with the teacher. An awkward hush hangs in the air as Ji-hoon and Sehyun find themselves standing together. Breaking the silence, Ji-hoon observes that Sehyun seems pretty tight with Ms. Hayen Jang. Sehyun shoots back, noting he also appears close to her. This prompts Ji-hoon to admit their shared history as college buddies. He attempts to dig a little deeper, deciding he won't push too hard but will just toss out a few conversational hooks to see if she bites. His casual comments skillfully suggest his insight into Hayen's life, and Sehyun, unsuspecting, takes the bait. She reveals that she bumped into her homeroom teacher at the OBGYN, then cheekily asks if he's dating Hayen. Ji-hoon denies it but can't help his curiosity when Sehyun hints at Hayen's pregnancy. She then asks if he knows who Hayen is currently seeing, and he cleverly keeps up his act of being in the know about Hayen. Based on what he's heard, he begins to piece together the puzzle, suspecting that Hayen might be expecting. As they stand there, lost in thought, Rani dashes back to them. Sehyun quickly begs Ji-hoon to keep their conversation a secret from Rani. fearing the news will spread like wildfire if she gets wind of it. Their destination for spicy rice cakes turns out to be closed, much to Hayen's disappointment. Undeterred, they decide to find another spot to satisfy their craving. Meanwhile, Hayen and Do-jun Kong find themselves in another restaurant, where Do-jun, ever the gentleman, has ordered a smorgasbord of dishes to give Hayen a variety of choices. She wonders aloud about their ability to finish all the food and questions the absence of other patrons, suspecting he might have rented out the entire place again. He confirms her suspicion, causing her to inwardly cringe at his extravagance. She can't help but wonder how he knew about her fondness for spicy rice cakes, but she doesn't let that stop her from digging in. As he watches her eat, he suggests that if something is bothering her, she should voice it. Her response is a question: what's there to complain about when dining in a privately rented restaurant? But he senses her unease, comparing her chopstick use to stabbing him, and encourages her to share her thoughts. Finally, she admits, only because he insists, that his habit of renting out entire places makes her uncomfortable. It's not necessary to flaunt his wealth to the point of inconveniencing others, especially since this is a popular spot for her students. How sad would they be if they couldn't get their favorite food here? Do-jun explains that he wanted to treat her to the best spicy rice cakes, which are said to be from this very restaurant. As he speaks, she can't help but feel her heart flutter. Maybe he's a better person than she initially thought. He finishes by saying that if she doesn't like such gestures, she should make a decision so they can meet more freely. However, she interprets this as Do-jun wanting to create a happy family for Do-jul, which inherently involves marriage. All the while, he simply watches her as she enjoys her meal. Following their dinner, Hayen insists on boxing up the untouched dishes. The aroma of spicy cuisine fills the car, a testament to their extravagant meal. She playfully chides Do-jun for his wastefulness, dashing his hopes of impressing her with his generosity. Yet, there's an undeniable charm in watching her stubbornly eat the rice cakes. Instead of heading home, Do-jun takes a detour. Usually, Hayen doesn't question their destination, but today, she's unusually quiet, lost in thought. They drive in companionable silence to a cafe offering a stunning night view. Despite the month that has passed since their first meeting, Do-jun vividly recalls the electric sensation of Hayen's touch and the softness of her lips. Each time he sees her, a wave of longing washes over him. It's a feeling he struggles to understand. As if he were a love-struck teenager again. When he proposed to her after discovering Do-jul's existence, he believed it was out of responsibility. Now, he finds himself questioning his motives. Does he want to marry her because of their child, or is it because he yearns for her companionship? This is the first time he's fallen so deeply for someone. And also the first time he's faced such a rejection. As they cruise back in the car, Do-jun notices Hayen nodding off. She looks a bit uncomfortable, so he decides to adjust her seat for a more relaxed position. This brings him closer to her, and as he does, she stirs and opens her eyes. Seizing the moment, he asks if he can kiss her, playfully adding that silence at the count of 3 will be taken as consent. Before she can utter a word, he leans in for the kiss. Their intimate moment is abruptly interrupted by a ringing phone. Hayen suggests he answer it, unaware that it's her phone that's buzzing. Given the persistence of the caller, it seems like an important call. Do-jun, however, tells her that if she doesn't mind ignoring it, he's more than happy to resume their interrupted kiss. But she swiftly picks up the phone, only to find out it's her dad on the other end. As she delves into a family conversation, Do-jun sits patiently, respecting her privacy and waiting for her to finish. We learn that when Hayen was just a little girl of 6, her dad introduced her to a stranger and announced he'd be marrying her. She can't quite remember her feelings from that moment, but she recalls hoping that her dad's happiness would mean more visits from him. She thought she had a role in his joy, not realizing her feelings were inconsequential to him. Hidden from her young eyes, the stranger was already expecting her half-sibling. Her dad was already shifting his focus, ready to shower his new family with all the love he had, just as her mom had once said he could. But her dad's frequent visits remained a dream. With time, she simply accepted her dad's new marriage as an inevitable part of life. Their phone conversation drifts on for a bit before she finally hangs up. Do-jun, curious, asks who had called. When she tells him, he further inquires if her parents live far away. It's then she reveals her parents divorced when she was only 4 years old. Hayen opens up a bit more, explaining how her mom lived alone after the divorce, while her dad is about to tie the knot for the 3rd time. She also mentions her 2 half-sisters, with the youngest currently out of their dad's reach. So, she decides to step in, setting up a meeting with her. As she steps out of Do-jun's car, he quickly follows, curious if she'd introduce him to her sister. He takes a moment to study her. Noticing her lips are slightly swollen. He comments that had he known the call would upset her, he would have urged her not to answer. This catches her off guard. She hadn't told him she was sad, nor did she show it. Her story was shared in a neutral tone. It makes her wonder about Do-jun. How could he know her feelings even before she did? Back home, Hayen offers her sister some of the food they brought back. However, her sister seems more interested in Do-jun's business card. She's thrilled at the thought of having met the vice president of the Daehan group, and excitedly speculates he might become their hyungbu, a term for an older sister's husband. Despite Hayen's protests, Ji-won insists that Do-jun seemed to enjoy the title. When Ji-won reveals she has a day off from school, she proposes visiting Hyungbu at his office for lunch. Hayen isn't thrilled with the idea, but Ji-won insists Do-jun had given her an open invitation to visit any time. The business card, according to her, is her golden ticket. Protective as ever, Hayen warns her against such a visit. Their conversation shifts to Ji-won's recent argument with their dad, with Hayen probing if it's related to their dad's impending marriage. Ji-won then shares her feelings of betrayal by their dad. Even though she understands he has his own life, she can't help but remember how heartbroken he was when their mom passed away. She vividly recalls the dinner where he introduced them to his new love interest, and how he showered her with affection. Watching him fuss over this woman, Ji-won couldn't help but feel hurt. It had only been 2 years since their mom's passing. Yet it seemed their dad's affections had shifted so swiftly. They delve deeper into their family matters, sharing feelings and thoughts. The conversation takes a pause when Ji-won gets back to the food Hayen brought. She then asks Hayen if she thinks her boyfriend will make it to their dad's wedding the next day. Hayen, however, replies that he's a pretty busy man. The wedding day is here, and Do-jun makes his entrance. As he raises his hand to wave at Hayen, she dashes towards him, pulling his hand down, insisting they need to chat. As they navigate towards a quieter corner, they bump into Hayen's aunt, who is intrigued by the handsome man accompanying Hayen. Before Hayen can conjure up a response, Do-jun introduces himself as her boyfriend. This revelation prompts the aunt to whisk them away, proudly introducing Do-jun to everyone as Hayen's future husband. The introductions happen in a whirlwind, and despite Hayen's attempts to steal a moment with Do-jun, her aunt persists in implying a deeper relationship between them. She even hints at an impending wedding, to which Do-jun playfully promises some good news soon. It's clear that the aunt is thrilled about the idea of her niece having a boyfriend. When Hayen finally manages to pull Do-jun aside, she questions his apparent deviation from his usual adherence to schedules and plans. But Do-jun shifts the focus to her, asking if she's been eating well as she seems to have lost weight, and if she's experiencing morning sickness. Back to her question, he admits that it seems like his routine and plans only falter when it comes to her. Wrapping his jacket around her, he promises to ponder why he's unable to stick to his plans when it comes to her and why it doesn't seem to bother him in the least. Next day, Tae-woo and Southeast Hyun hit the road to school, pedaling their bikes. "Speed up, Se-hyun, or we'll be tardy," Tae-woo nudges. She retorts, reminding him of her faux leg pain and the fact that she suggested he ride alone. He pulls up, questioning if she despises his company so much she'd sabotage her bike and fake an injury. Se-hyun realizes he saw through her charade but still gifted her a new bike an early birthday present. His peculiar ways left her thinking he was just messing with her. How bad does it hurt? He inquires about her leg, which she disregards, shifting the topic to his popularity instead. Unfazed, he insists on taking her to his mom's clinic post-school. She tries to divert again, probing about his romantic preferences. She offers to play matchmaker, but he chuckles it off, describing his dream girl as a petite, short-haired beauty with big brown eyes, who looks adorable even when sulking. Hayen deduces there's someone he's interested in and pushes him to spill the beans. Suddenly, Ronnie comes sprinting towards them, calling out for Hayen, but halts at the sight of Taewoo, greeting him sweetly. Taewoo returns the greeting and leaves the two friends. Once he's gone, Ronnie fawns over him, making Hayen question her motives. Ronnie denies any ulterior motives, claiming she has some juicy gossip. Hayen is skeptical until Ronnie spills the beans about their homeroom teacher, Hee-won's pregnancy, which leaves Hayen flabbergasted. Ronnie keeps speculating about Hee-won's love life. Annoyed, Hayen demands to know how she learned about Hee-won's condition. Ronnie reveals she overheard the student-teacher discussing it. Hayen, alarmed, leaves her bike with Ronnie and rushes to school. There, she confronts Ji-hoon, insisting on a conversation despite his upcoming staff meeting. She accuses him of leaking the news to Ronnie, despite her warning. He doesn't deny it but avoids explaining why, leaving for his meeting. As Hayen ponders over her next move, Hee-won approaches her with a smile, causing Hayen to break down and apologize. Later, Hee-won finds herself in the vice principal's office, facing questions about the circulating rumors. She apologizes, but doesn't deny them. The vice principal emphasizes the need to control the rumor mill, fearing damage to the school's reputation and potential disciplinary actions for her. As she exits the office, another teacher snidely labels her disgraceful. Throughout the day, the whispers follow her, but she can't bring herself to deny the rumors as it would feel like denying Do-jul. She contemplates her impending resignation or possible firing and how to protect her unborn baby from this chaos. Overwhelmed, she feels faint, but Ji-hoon catches her, asking if she's alright. Ji-hoon casually suggests they blow off the last class and take a stroll instead. Hee-won, pulling her arm free, agrees, but on one condition: he sends Hayen to her office. She'd seen Hayen upset earlier that day and hadn't asked too many questions then. Now, however, she's pieced together that it's linked to the rumors. She blames herself for it, knowing Hayen isn't the type to fuel gossip. There must be more to it. Ji-hoon taunts Hee-won, accusing her of pretending to be aloof and superior. He scoffs at her predicament, reminding her of how she embarrassed him in the past. Despite her calling him all sorts of names, at least he wasn't expecting a baby. Hee-won confronts him about the rumor, to which he confesses nonchalantly. He admits to making a call, but pins the blame on a loose-lipped student. When she questions his motives, he brings up their past in college. He accuses her of ruining his reputation, which resulted in him taking a break from school and being labeled a disappointment by his family. He smirks, admitting he would have sought revenge sooner if this opportunity hadn't presented itself so conveniently. As he walks away, he promises to dismiss the students. The next morning, Hee-won wakes up dreading the day ahead. Her pride as an educator has taken a hit and all she wants is to escape reality. As she gets ready for work, she contemplates Do-jun's proposal. Could they make it work as a family without love? She's devoted 3 years to teaching and takes pride in her job. She considers using Do-jun's influence to secure her position a little longer. However, the thought of exploiting Do-jun makes her feel guilty, and she decides against it. She joins Ji-hoon in front of the classroom, who questions her hesitation. She walks in, greets her students, and is about to start the lesson when a stylish woman struts in, introducing herself as Kyung-soo's mother. Hee-won tries to direct her to the staff room since class is in session, but the woman starts berating her publicly. Hee-won attempts to stand her ground but decides to step outside with the woman, leaving Ji-hoon in charge, to avoid creating a scene in front of her students. Once in the hallway, Hee-won apologizes to the irate parent, but her apology falls on deaf ears. The woman criticizes her for failing to keep her personal life separate from her professional one and causing rumors to circulate among the students. Despite Hayen's efforts to calm her down, the woman raises her voice, attracting attention from inside the classrooms. Hayen spots the commotion and immediately calls her uncle to come to Hayen's aid. In a surprising twist, Kyung-soo's mom pulls Principal Park aside for a chat. She casually drops that her husband, the big-shot CEO, had been eager to check out the school, but she managed to hold him back. With a pointed look, she asks Park about his game plan for the ongoing drama. Before Park can delve into the rumor saga, she cuts him off. The how of the rumors doesn't interest her. Instead, she points to Hayen, standing quietly nearby, suggesting they verify the truth of the rumors instead. Taken aback, Park turns to Hayen, who remains silent, lost in thought about the vice principal's advice. She finally apologizes for the rumors and offers to resign if necessary. But she prefers taking a leave first, as losing their homeroom teacher suddenly could be hard on the students. When Kyung-soo's mom pushes her about the rumors, Hayen counters, questioning the relevance of the rumors and urging them to focus on the situation at hand. Just when the situation heats up, Do-jun swings by. His arrival catches everyone off guard. He casually mentions hearing about a board meeting from Park and moves over to Hayen, holding her hand. This unexpected gesture leaves Kyung-soo's mom and Park speechless. He whispers to Hayen to play along and checks with his secretary about his schedule for the board meeting. His secretary reports he's booked until May. At this, Do-jun points out the difficulty in rescheduling, especially with their wedding planned in April. As jaws drop around the room, he explains that Hayen kept their relationship a secret to avoid making others uncomfortable and impacting her work life. Park quickly assures that they'd love to have Hayen stay on staff. Do-jun then expresses concern over the rumor-induced stress on Hayen, making Park squirm. He commits to tracking down the rumor starter. Turning to Kyung-soo's mom, Do-jun questions if her call for a board meeting was because of Hayen. He subtly reminds her of their business contract, prompting an immediate apology from her. As Hayen tries to stop him, Do-jun comforts her about the embarrassing situation while Kyung-soo's mom continues apologizing. Hayen accepts her apology. Do-jun then suggests taking Hayen away for a private chat since teaching the afternoon class might be too much for her. Principal Park agrees reluctantly, and they leave, leaving the secretary behind. In the parking lot, Do-jun and Hayen sit in silence in his car. Breaking the silence, Hayen asks how he found out and why he came to school. He reveals Hayen had called him, to which she thanks him. She voices her concerns about their lie being exposed easily. Smiling, he assures her it wouldn't be a lie since they're getting married in April. She protests that she can't just get married like that, April is practically here. He questions her resistance, and she fires back, asking why he unilaterally decided on this. Doesn't he care about what she wants? He coolly responds that if he didn't step in, she wouldn't have let the situation get so out of hand. Feeling cornered, she apologizes, admitting she's at a loss when he gets angry. He asks her bluntly, what is he to her? Why did he have to hear about the situation from her niece instead of her? She admits she kept him in the dark because she didn't want to burden him with her problems. He retorts, asking if she really has to treat him like a stranger. His disappointment is palpable when he tells her he hates seeing her standing there, head bowed. This triggers her anger. He insists he can't ignore matters involving his child and the child's mother. She reminds him sharply that they only had a one-night stand, and he knows nothing about who she truly is. Being with him is tough, and she feels uncomfortable around him. Tears start falling from her eyes, and he pulls her into a comforting embrace. When she finally stops crying, she apologizes for ruining his suit with her tears. Offering to dry clean it, he informs her the suit can't be dry cleaned. The only way she can make up for it is by marrying him, he jokes. She considers his proposal, accusing him of teasing her. He admits he enjoys teasing her, but then turns serious, asking why she doesn't want to marry him, love aside. After all, that could change after marriage. She confesses her fear. She knows it's best for their son, Do-jul, but she isn't convinced it's right for them. He reassures her, saying he's certain marriage is the right path. She should trust him and say yes to a wedding in April. She attempts to argue, but he cuts her off, insisting he's more capable than she thinks. He only needs her to say yes. Then he kisses her on the forehead. They share a quiet moment before he reminds her she hasn't answered yet. He warns her that if she doesn't respond in 3 seconds, he'll take her silence as agreement. As he starts counting, she braces herself. On the count of 3, he kisses her. Later that night, Hayen lies in bed, mulling over the day's events. She can't believe she agreed to marry Do-jun. But then again, being married to someone who kisses like him might not be so bad. The thought makes her blush. Suddenly, Manhwa knocks and enters her room. He takes one look at her flushed face and comments that she looks terrible. She asks if he's ever heard of knocking as he saunters towards her bed. He shrugs and responds that he's been hollering your name for ages, but no response. She counters that maybe she was catching some Z's, to which he replies that he heard she'd left work early and assumed she was feeling under the weather. Spotting her puffy eyes, he ventures, been crying, while reaching out to her. She swiftly denies it and mock threatens to bite him if he dares touch her. In response, he gives her a playful swat on the head and exits, leaving behind an instruction for her to freshen up and join him for some chicken dinner he's brought over. Later, she emerges from her room to find Manhwa in the living room, getting the chicken ready. She inquires about Miran's whereabouts, to which he responds that Miran's family gathering is running a bit late but she'll be home soon. Hayen wonders aloud if Miran's family had set her up on another blind date. Realizing she's just blurted this out to Miran's boyfriend, she puts a halt to her chatter. But he's heard enough and asks about these blind dates. Hayen deflects his question with a quick, "Didn't you know?" and changes the subject by asking him why he's so hung up on her non-existent tears. They then switch gears and start talking about him. Over dinner, she nudges him about what he plans to do about Miran's blind dates. A while into their meal, Manhwa mentions his intentions to formally meet Miran's father. He seeks Hayen's advice on how far he needs to go to make a good impression as a son-in-law. She reassures him that he's already perfect as he is. She reflects silently that his words would have hurt her not long ago, but now they don't sting. Probably because she's agreed to marry Do-jun. Manhwa returns to his earlier question about her tears, and she drops the bombshell she's set to tie the knot in April. He recovers from his shock to assume she means April next year. She corrects him, it's this April. The news floors him. He points out that April's just around the corner, and she shrugs, it just happened. Skeptical, Manhwa questions if it was Do-jun, the baby's father, who called the shots on the wedding date. Hayen jumps to Do-jun's defense, saying it's not his fault, but Manhwa isn't convinced. He places a comforting hand on her shoulder, asking about the circumstances that led to such an impromptu wedding date. Just then, Miran walks in. Spotting Manhwa's hand on Hayen's shoulder, she demands to know what's happening. Hayen quickly denies anything and asks Manhwa to remove his hand. Manhwa invites Miran to join them, saying she should hear their conversation. But Miran refuses. Hayen gets up to leave, hinting that Manhwa and Miran need to talk. As Manhwa tries to stop her, she tells him to mind his business. She then casually informs Miran about her upcoming April wedding, asking her to catch the bouquet, leaving Miran stunned. She promises to explain everything later and asks them to keep any arguments down. Back in her room, she locks the door behind her. Her long-standing crush on Manhwa is something she needs to let go of now that she's getting married. She thinks about how she's almost entirely over him. Days later, Renewal awkwardly tails Hayen around school. Post the incident with the woman, the school atmosphere has settled down. Principal Park addressed the students, urging them to avoid spreading baseless rumors. Renewal received a stern lecture in the principal's office. Hayen returned to school the next day, acting as if nothing had happened. Everything returned to normal, except for the strained friendship between Hayen and Renewal. Hayen suggests they should get back to their old ways. Ariana replies that she feels bad, but Hayen quickly brushes it off as her own doing. With a self-deprecating grin, she confesses to being a chatterbox who just can't keep things to herself. Ariana, with a friendly jab, calls her out for being a goofball and playfully hauls her towards the soccer field. She's got some juicy gossip. There's a buzz about Taewoo and the student teacher. At the field, Taewoo is in action. He takes a kick at the ball, sending it whizzing past Jihoon. A quick oops, my bad, from Taewoo, and he's back in the game, while Jihoon seethes on the sidelines. Ariana, always ready with commentary, notes Taewoo's soccer prowess before explaining to a curious Hayen why Taewoo and Jihoon are sharing the field. Apparently, Taewoo roped Jihoon into this game. Ariana then spills the beans on how she ended up sharing Sehyeon's woes with Taewoo. Now, Taewoo seems to be giving Jihoon a tough time on the field as payback. As she narrates the story, she suddenly drops a bombshell. She suspects Taewoo has a soft spot for Sehyeon. This throws Sehyeon off balance. Ariana reassures her that she's pretty good at reading such cues and promises to back off if Taewoo really does have feelings for Sehyeon. As Sehyeon tries to digest this news, Ariana pulls her attention back to the game just as Taewoo takes a shot. The ball soars and smacks Jihoon square in the face, much to everyone's shock. Cheers erupt from Taewoo's teammates as Jihoon reveals a bloody nose. Taewoo rushes over, insisting it was an accident. Jihoon, however, sees it differently and accuses Taewoo of doing it intentionally because of Sehyeon. Taewoo challenges Jihoon about his behavior towards Sehyeon, which escalates the tension. In the midst of this drama, Taewoo defuses the situation by announcing that Jihoon has agreed to treat everyone to burgers since he lost the match. This unexpected announcement instantly lifts the mood and the crowd starts placing their orders. The atmosphere lightens as they cheer for Jihoon's generosity while Sehyeon watches silently. The following day, Haewon steps into the school, clearly nervous. She bumps into the vice principal, who awkwardly wishes her a great day. The next teacher she meets apologizes if he ever upset her. When she enters the staff office, she's met with silence and stares, making her feel out of place and alone. But just when things seem unbearable, Ms. Kim, a fellow teacher, approaches her and invites her to dinner, offering a glimmer of hope in an otherwise challenging day. That same evening, Haewon and Ms. Kim decide to grab dinner together. As they're heading out, Ms. Kim, with an awkward chuckle, asks if Haewon is experiencing any morning sickness. Realizing the question might be a bit too personal, she quickly apologizes. Haewon, unfazed, assures her she's fine. They find a bench and sit down, an awkward silence hanging in the air. Haewon breaks the silence by expressing gratitude to Ms. Kim for being there for her. Ms. Kim reassures her that no matter what's going on, Haewon is still the same person to her. She apologizes if she's been a bit too careful around her lately. Then, with a curious twinkle in her eye, she admits she's dying to know all about Haewon and Doojun's relationship. Just as Haewon brushes it off saying there's not much to tell, her phone rings. It's Doojun. Doojun's voice comes through the phone, asking if he can swing by to pick her up. The call reminds Haewon of an appointment they had. She gives him the go-ahead, and he assures her he'll meet her at the school. Once the call ends, Ms. Kim teases Haewon about the conversation sounding a bit dry. She thought there might be some sweet talk, but Haewon just laughs it off and cancels their dinner plans. Later, as Doojun drives Haewon to their destination, a tense silence fills the car. Haewon finally breaks it by asking about his father. She quickly clarifies that she's not trying to score points, but just wants to make a good first impression. Doojun tells her not to worry about his parents, but the mention of parents makes Haewon realize she'll be meeting Doojun's mother too. She hadn't planned for this and starts to get nervous. Suddenly, she's reminded of a soap opera where the wealthy parents disapproved of their son's less fortunate girlfriend, even offering her money to leave him. The thought sends her into a spiral of anxiety. She starts wondering about her unborn child's future if Doojun's parents don't approve of her. She even contemplates leaving the country. Sensing her distress, Doojun places his hand on hers and asks what's on her mind. In a sudden outburst, she yells that she'll take the envelope, leaving him confused. His serious expression prompts her to ask about his siblings. He tells her it's just him and Se-hyun's father, but he has numerous cousins. He adds that if he ever suggests running away from a family gathering, she should follow him without question. This leaves her taken aback, but he assures her it's nothing serious, he just doesn't want her to get tangled up in family drama. As they pull up to their destination, Hayen frantically searches for her mirror. Do-jun tells her she doesn't need it, she's already beautiful. Then, he leans over and plants a gentle kiss on her cheek. Inside the house, they sit opposite Do-jun's parents, an uncomfortable silence filling the room as they all sip their tea. Hayen can't help but marvel at the sight before her, Daehan's group president Kang Chong-gil and his wife Han Suk-hee, right there in the flesh. The couple she'd seen countless times on the news now seemed so ordinary. They bicker away about food of all things, and Hayen finds it surprisingly endearing. The conversation naturally shifts towards the topic of wedding plans. An April wedding, isn't that a tad rushed? Chong-gil muses aloud. Do-jun, however, casually brushes off his father's concerns, confidently assuring him that everything is under control. As for the matter of their future home, he's already delegated that task to his trusty secretary. All this while, Hayen observes Do-jun's responses, thoroughly impressed by his meticulous planning. Yet, she can't shake off a sense of being sidelined. After all, no one seems to be asking her anything. She starts to wonder if she's being silently judged. Her train of thought is suddenly interrupted as Suk-hee addresses her directly. The unexpected term of endearment, daughter-in-law, takes Hayen by surprise. Suk-hee wants to ask her something, and Hayen braces herself for a volley of personal questions. To her relief, Suk-hee's question is rather simple: how did Do-jun win her over? The question catches everyone off guard, leading to immediate protests from both Do-jun and Chong-gil about its personal nature. Suk-hee, however, turns to Hayen for her opinion. To everyone's relief, Hayen doesn't mind answering. In fact, she candidly admits that it was she who chased after Do-jun, much to Suk-hee's delight. Hayen is pleasantly surprised at how receptive and emotive Do-jun's mother turns out to be. Even when Suk-hee pushes for more details, despite the men's attempts to intervene, Hayen finds it rather endearing. Suk-hee goes on to reveal that Do-jun has had his fair share of female admirers, with women regularly confessing their feelings to him. However, the mood shifts when Suk-hee casually mentions her sisters are on their way over. Do-jun isn't pleased. They had agreed to keep Hayen away from the aunts for now, due to her condition. But it seems it's too late, the aunts are already on their way and will arrive by 7 p.m. As if on cue, the doorbell rings. Recalling Do-jun's advice about fleeing from family gatherings, Hayen readies herself for a quick exit. Do-jun swiftly excuses them both, assuring his parents that the aunts will meet Hayen at the wedding. Despite Chong-gil's protests, they manage to sneak out through the back. Once outside, they conceal themselves as the aunts make their boisterous entry. Do-jun swiftly picks up Hayen and makes a dash for the gate, instructing her to grab his wallet from his jacket pocket. Their hasty escape is briefly interrupted by a blonde girl calling out Do-jun's name. Following his instructions, Hayen hands over the money to the girl, whose eyes light up at the sight of the bills. She snags the cash, flashing him a cheeky grin and promising to turn a blind eye as he strolls by. In the same breath, she casually mentions a purse she's been eyeing, to which he replies with a nonchalant invitation to visit him at work the next day. She then introduces herself to Hayen as Soo-jin, his cousin. As Do-jun speeds off, he apologizes to Hayen for the hasty escape, explaining that his aunts can be a tad overwhelming, hence it's best to keep a safe distance. Hayen, curious, asks him to explain what he meant by overwhelming. Do-jun describes them as excessively affectionate and high energy. Hayen muses that they sound just like her father, who was always brimming with love. She then adds that perhaps it's better to have too much affection than too little. Do-jun, however, seems to think there's such a thing as too much love. After a brief silence, Do-jun suggests grabbing dinner, an idea Hayen readily agrees to. Over dinner, Hayen remarks on how nice Do-jun's parents seemed. She then playfully probes about his dating history, a question that renders him speechless. His silence makes her regret asking, but also fuels her curiosity. She figures that given his skills in bed, he must have been with quite a few women. Not that she has anyone to compare him to, but she knows he was her first taste of ecstasy. Seeing him lost in thought, she teases him about having so many exes he has to count them. Do-jun finally speaks up, sharing an advice from his married friends: it's best to take one's dating past to the grave. This comment irks Hayen. He further adds that he's unsure whether to count those who barely feature in his past, leading Hayen to pout in annoyance. Finding her sulking adorable, Do-jun can't help but call her cute. When she asks who he's referring to, he confesses about a brief 2-month fling with an actress named Young Hae-mi 4 years ago. Hayen is taken aback when she realizes it's the Young Hae-mi. Do-jun explains that he was too busy learning his family business then, and couldn't handle Hae-mi's constant attention. Hayen is baffled that he found Hae-mi's attention stressful. But Do-jun insists he didn't find her that attractive and disliked his plans being disrupted. Hayen finds herself mulling over his words, realizing that ever since they met, nothing has gone as per his plan. She wonders if she's the exception. The thought is interrupted when Do-jun suggests they stop by the mall to pick something for her mom for their dinner the next day. Hayen assures him that her mom isn't like most moms, and flowers would be just fine. Elsewhere, Se-hyun walks home, lost in thoughts about Arayani's revelation about Taewoo's feelings for her. As she recalls Taewoo's description of his ideal girl, a stranger stops her, asking if she's Se-hyun. Se-hyun looks at the girl standing in front of her and asks who she is. The girl introduces herself as Kim Da-hae, a broadcasting student in her 3rd year. Se-hyun quickly puts 2 and 2 together, realizing why the senior student is hanging around Taewoo's place, even though he's just a sophomore. She asks Da-hae if she's waiting for Taewoo, and when Da-hae confirms, Se-hyun suggests they chat at a nearby cafe. In the cafe, Se-hyun is the only one to order something to eat. Da-hae declines, claiming she's already full. Se-hyun then asks Da-hae if she's free on Saturday at 2 p.m. When Da-hae inquires why, Se-hyun reveals her plan to set her up with Taewoo. Da-hae agrees to meet, prompting Se-hyun to ask if she's into sports. Da-hae shares that she plays a bit of tennis and ping pong, which makes Se-hyun smile because Taewoo loves tennis. Se-hyun then brings up Da-hae's blonde hair, asking if it's dyed. Da-hae admits she colored it over spring break. Se-hyun tells her Taewoo isn't a fan of dyed hair or heavy makeup. She also mentions he doesn't like it when girls wear miniskirts or too tight clothes, remembering all the times Taewoo complained about her outfits. Da-hae doesn't seem bothered, stating that his dislikes make him seem thoughtful. Se-hyun happily declares that they're a perfect match, promising to support them fully. Da-hae, however, wonders why Se-hyun is so keen on helping her. She suggests that maybe Se-hyun likes Taewoo and is trying to sabotage her chances. Se-hyun is taken aback, wondering why everyone thinks she's into Taewoo. She assures Da-hae that she and Taewoo are practically family. Da-hae shares that all the girls thought Taewoo had a thing for Se-hyun. Se-hyun dismisses the idea, explaining they only hang out because they live next door to each other. She insists Taewoo doesn't see her that way, and it frustrates her when people assume there's something going on between them. After Da-hae leaves, Se-hyun is determined to ensure no one ever mistakes her feelings for Taewoo again. The following day, Do-jun and Hayen head to meet her mom. Hayen warns Do-jun that it will be like a soap opera with moments of confusion and frustration. They arrive at the private dining room where her mom is already waiting. It's exactly as Hayen expected, an awkward silence filled with unspoken tension. When the waitress arrives to take their drink orders, Do-jun orders juice for Hayen. This catches her mom's attention. She directly asks Hayen if she's pregnant. Caught off guard, Hayen remains silent, but Do-jun steps in, referring to Hayen's mom as his mother-in-law, and taking responsibility for the pregnancy. Her mom isn't thrilled about this new title, making Hayen uneasy. Hayen breaks the news to her mom about the April wedding. Her mom agrees to attend but makes it clear she won't do anything more. The meeting ends abruptly with her mom leaving. Hee-won is left apologizing to Do-jun for her mom's behavior. Overwhelmed, she breaks down in tears. Do-jun comforts her, joking that he should have brought a handkerchief after all. So, after that, the big day is set for Saturday, April 22nd at 2 p.m. With a baby on the way and a wedding to coordinate, Hee-won feels like she's balancing on a tightrope. The question of whether they can pull off a perfect wedding in such a short time frame looms large in her mind. But much to her surprise, everything starts falling into place, just like a perfectly designed jigsaw puzzle. Her pregnancy grants her an exemption from most of the wedding prep, with the exception of posing for the wedding photos. All other preparations are seamlessly managed by Do-jun's secretarial staff and his mother, who prove to be experts in wedding planning. In this flurry of activity, Hee-won finds an unexpected ally in Secretary Lee. His constant grumbles about Do-jun's tendency to deviate from plans somehow make him seem more approachable. As she watches Suk-hee, Do-jun, and Secretary Lee handle the task she assumed would be hers, she can't help but feel a sense of displacement. On the other hand, her mother remains conspicuously absent, leaving her father to smooth over any potential issues. Secretary Lee, always the efficient professional, has shortlisted 3 potential homes for Hee-won and Do-jun. Without even seeing them, Do-jun finds fault with each one: too small, inadequate yard, undesirable location. Yet, Secretary Lee doesn't back down and persuades them to give the houses a chance. His firm tone leaves Hee-won slightly unnerved. They embark on their house hunting journey with Do-jun behind the wheel. It feels strangely intimate, being alone together after so long. Their first stop is the house that Do-jun dismissed due to its location. To Hee-won, it doesn't look so bad. Do-jun offhandedly mentions his brother's house nearby and the ample backyard space for future children. Hee-won raises an eyebrow at his unilateral planning, but lets it pass. His mention of Do-jul having friends over leaves her blushing. Inside the dark house, as she searches for the light switch, Do-jun moves closer, backing her into a wall. She questions his intentions, to which he points out the light switch and teases her about expecting something else. As she tries to create some distance, he holds her hand, revealing his true intentions. He leans in, praising her natural scent that always drives him wild, before planting a kiss on her. Their moment of intimacy is abruptly interrupted by a small voice saying, "Kithing." They freeze, turning to find a little kid watching them with wide-eyed curiosity. Hee-won gently pulls away from Do-jun and turns to the little girl, asking her name. The kid replies, "Cha Yun-soo." Do-jun, a bit sternly, asks her where her parents are and why she snuck into someone else's house. Hee-won chides him for being too harsh, then kneels down to ask Yun-soo how she got in. The kid points to a door, saying her parents are outside. Hee-won suggests they go find them. As they step outside, Yun-soo keeps repeating "Kith" until a woman's voice calls out her name. Yun-soo dashes towards her mom, who's crossing a bridge, connecting their houses. Hee-won asks Do-jun about the bridge. He mentions Secretary Lee had mentioned it in his report, adding it would be removed. Suddenly, Hee-won recognizes Yun-soo's mom as Yoon-hee-soo, the famous novelist. Do-jun seems surprised, asking if she's really that well known. Hee-won, a longtime fan, confirms it and asks if he knows the Cha family. He admits to knowing President Cha a bit. Hee-won tells him she loves the house and asks if they can take it. He points out it needs work before they can move in. She suggests they stay at his current place while renovating, pleading with him to agree. He does. As they talk, Siyu approaches them and Hee-won excitedly confesses she's a big fan. When Siyu inquires about the house, Hee-won says it's fantastic and that they've decided to keep the bridge, much to Siyu's delight. Yun-soo chirps Kith again, telling her mom she saw the scary man and the pretty lady Kith, or Kiss. At that moment, President Cha arrives, scooping up Yun-soo in his arms. He greets Do-jun, mentioning he often sees his brother Han-jun. The conversation veers towards the upcoming wedding. Do-jun invites him and his wife, and President Cha teases him about living near Han-jun. Do-jun admits he did have reservations, but his wife-to-be loves the house. He wraps an arm around Hayen, announcing her pregnancy and their plans for a child-friendly backyard. Siyu, also pregnant, suggests they go for hospital visits together. Do-jun, however, insists on accompanying Hayen for all appointments. Despite a bit of resistance from Hayen, Do-jun stands firm. President Cha asks about their moving-in date and the bridge. When his wife mentions Hayen's fondness for the bridge, he offers to keep it if Do-jun agrees. With Hayen giving him pleading eyes, Do-jun relents, making her day. Later that night, Hayen sits alone in her empty room, her belongings already moved to Do-jun's place. Their honeymoon is postponed. Suddenly, Miran knocks and enters, a departure from her usual barging in. Hayen points this out, to which Miran tells her to stop fussing and join her outside. Hayen is lounging at her desk, clearly not in the mood to move. Miran nudges her, reminding her that her wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event. "Don't you want to look your best?" she asks, as she bustles around preparing face masks. As she gets ready to pamper Hayen, Miran casually inquires if Hayen and Do-jun have figured out their living arrangements. Hayen casually drops that Siyu is going to be their next-door neighbor. Miran is taken aback, exclaiming her surprise. Miran then shifts to a more serious topic. "Are you happy, Hayen?" she asks. She shares that her dad wants her back home since her reason for living with Hayen no longer holds. Miran teases Hayen about her pregnancy, asking why she had to go and stomp all over her freedom. Hayen apologizes half-heartedly and cheekily suggests Miran marry Minwook. Miran retorts that Minwook hasn't popped the question yet. Hayen playfully suggests that Miran could propose first. As they banter, Miran orders Hayen to lie down for the face mask. Hayen probes further about Miran's thoughts on marrying Minwook. Miran confesses that she feels smaller, less confident around him. Hayen encourages her, assuring her that Minwook loves her more than she knows. This makes Miran tear up. After applying the face mask, Miran asks Hayen if she's okay with marrying without love. Hayen assures her she likes Do-jun, he's not excessively cold like her mom or overly passionate like her dad, which suits her just fine. Miran wonders if their friendship will remain the same after Hayen's marriage. Hayen jokingly denies being close with Miran. On the wedding day, Do-jun's aunts gush over Hayen, who's already decked out in her wedding gown. They share stories of Do-jun as a baby and compliment Hayen on her looks and her match with Do-jun. Sookie eventually shoos them away for the photo session. Hayen poses with Do-jun's cousins, her relatives, school teachers, students, friends, and other guests. By the end, she's worn out. Alone at last, Minwook walks in, gives her a hug, and fondly remarks on her growth. He reminds her that he's there for her, calling himself Appa. When Hayen points out that she was born first, Minwook changes the subject, asking if she cried. Before he can answer, Do-jun steps in, warning Minwook to back off from his bride-to-be. The two men exchange heated words and glares, each promising the other will regret it if they hurt Hayen. After Minwook leaves, Do-jun checks in on Hayen. She assures him she's fine and enjoyed meeting his jovial aunts and cousins. Do-jun leans in for a kiss, complaining about the wedding formalities keeping his bride away from him. He praises her beauty, making her heart flutter. Just then, Kim Hayen, a beautiful girl, barges in, hugging Do-jun, and leaving him in shock. In a blink, Hayen's about to ask who this sudden intruder is when another person pops into the room, announcing it's time for Do-jun to get ready for the ceremony. Do-jun strides out without introducing Hayen, leaving Hayen puzzled and a tad bit annoyed. Just then, Sujin peeks in, looking surprised at Hayen's presence. Do-jun asks her to take Hayen away, and Hayen quickly explains herself as Sujin's buddy from way back. She adds that she's been studying in France and jetted back as soon as she heard about Do-jun's wedding. She also casually mentions how much she missed Do-jun. Just as Hayen's about to ask more, Sujin calls Hayen and they leave after wishing Hayen a great wedding. After their exit, Hayen feels a twinge of uneasiness but brushes it off as pre-wedding jitters. As the ceremony kicks off, Do-jun is at his attentive best, caring for Hayen throughout. She even has to console her dad, who's a waterfall of tears. They're swarmed by the aunts post-ceremony, prompting them to sneak away from the reception. Unbeknownst to them, Haewon spots Hayen watching them from afar. Fast forward to Haewon getting out of her shower and finding lingerie laid out on the bed. The room is a sea of rose petals, making her gasp in surprise. When Doojun walks in, he finds his wife hiding under the covers. He asks why she's bundled up and she claims that's how she usually sleeps. He pulls the cover off, only to have her yank it back, complaining about the awkward sleepwear, which makes Doojun burst into laughter. He explains that his mom and aunts were behind the elaborate setup. He playfully tries to get a peek at the lingerie, but she firmly keeps the covers on. She then asks him to button up his pajamas. He chuckles, saying his friends told him wedding night PJs are meant to be taken off easily. He reaches for the cover again, leaving Haewon blushing and flustered. She requests him to turn off the lights, but he refuses, just gazing at her. She blushes more and pleads with him to stop staring. Unable to resist any longer, he pulls her into a hug which sends her heart racing. Haewon can hear the rhythmic thump of his heartbeat, steady and soothing. Gently, he nudges her onto the bed, asking if he could indulge his desires, just for tonight. He kisses her hand softly, confessing that she has no idea how she affects him, and then he leans in to kiss her. Some time later, they're lying together, their bodies entwined. Haewon shifts a bit, causing him to ask if she's uncomfortable. She expresses concern about his arm getting cramped, suggesting they should sleep comfortably. He reassures her that he's perfectly cozy and pulls her even closer. She complains about the lack of space, to which he insists that he wants to sleep just like this, and she should get used to it. When she asks if he also finds it slightly awkward, being unused to sharing a bed, he agrees to adapt. When she proposes creating some distance between them, he outright refuses, joking that she might leave 250,000 won bills and bolt again, while tightening his grip around her. She retorts that she has no reason to run away now, and he reminds her that he knows both her workplace and her name, making it easier to track her down. She curiously asks if he had searched for her, to which he admits that he did for a month. When she questions why, he says he wanted to understand why she left him 100,000 won, and if that's all he was worth to her. He confesses that the memory of the mysterious woman who left him without even sharing her name had dented his ego. She apologizes and clarifies that the money had no hidden meaning, it was all she had that day. As a result, she had to trudge all the way to the train station in the biting cold. He teasingly asks if their night together was so special that she felt compelled to give him all she had. She cheekily tells him he's free to interpret it any way he wants. When he continues to tease her, she turns away, announcing she's going to sleep. He pulls her closer and drifts off to sleep. She soon follows suit. The next morning, Haewon is up with a start, yelling about being late for work. She begins to berate Miran for not waking her up, but stops mid-sentence as she remembers it's Sunday, and more importantly, she's now a married woman. The memories of the previous night make her blush. Just then, her husband strolls into the room, inviting her for breakfast. Savoring the scrumptious breakfast, Haewon catches Doojun gazing at her. She teases him about it, asking if he's the master chef behind the meal. He chuckles and admits that his mom deserves the culinary credit. He then throws a playful question at her, asking if she finds cooking men attractive. She responds with a no, but adds that knowing how to cook is definitely a useful skill. Taking it in stride, Doojun jokingly suggests that it'd be unfair to the world if a man as amazing as him could also cook. But then, he promises to learn if she wants him to. When he asks what her favorite dish is, she mentions kimchi stew. He proudly states that he can whip that up even without any cooking lessons. Suddenly, Haewon spots a shopping bag and curiously checks its contents. Doojun explains that it's a gift from his aunts, something about matching aprons. The idea of Doojun donning an apron and cooking tickles her, and she insists he should use it while preparing meals. He laughs and promises to consider it. Post-breakfast, Haewon finds herself lounging on the sofa, engrossed in a good book. Do-jun comes over and places a tray of fresh fruits beside her. As she munches on the fruits, she muses to herself that had she known married life would be this pampered, she would have tied the knot sooner. This thought brings a smile to her face. Noticing her smile, Do-jun inquires about the book she's reading. She dodges the question, turning the tables, by asking about his plans. He shares that he's organizing his schedule for the upcoming week. She feigns disinterest but then expresses that having a rough idea about his schedule could be beneficial. When she hesitates, worried that she's overstepping, he reassures her that it's natural for her to be curious about his activities. She hurriedly clarifies that she didn't want to pry and make him uncomfortable. He pulls her closer, showing her his packed schedule. With the wedding coming up sooner than planned, he had to cancel and reschedule all his meetings for the week. At this, she questions if there was a wedding plan she wasn't aware of. Trying to avoid the topic, Do-jun excuses himself to fix lunch. Undeterred, Hayen follows him into the kitchen, grilling him about a secret wedding plan. He attempts to divert the conversation, which only earns him a stern look from her. Eventually, he confesses that he set a date for the wedding, confident that he could win her over. This revelation stuns her. She questions why he seemed so certain about their marriage, while she was constantly wrestling with doubts. She wondered if they could build a happy family despite their different backgrounds and limited interactions. If not for Ji-hoon's rumors forcing Do-jun to announce their wedding, she might still be hesitant. But Do-jun never seemed to hesitate, and she wants to know why. Do-jun explains that he felt the need to take responsibility and found her a fitting partner to share that responsibility with. Do-jun tentatively asks if she's upset, but she dismisses his concern, claiming she's just tired. As she heads off to bed, she can't help but feel a little disappointed. She'd been hoping for a more heartfelt reason behind his decision to marry her, like maybe he had feelings for her too. But all she got was a practical answer about shared responsibilities. The realization that she might be falling for him harder than she thought hits her like a ton of bricks. In the kitchen, Do-jun offers to cook eel for dinner. She shrugs, telling him to do what he likes. As she idly picks up his tablet, she notices her name listed in his schedule for the day. Curious, she asks him about it. Joining her on the couch, Do-jun explains that spending time with her is his way of rewarding himself after 4 long months. Slightly taken aback, she points out that he's been on his feet all day because of her, hardly a reward. He insists that despite having to postpone their honeymoon, clearing his schedule to spend time with her feels like a reward. He admits that while he works a lot, it doesn't mean he enjoys it. What he truly enjoys is being with her. He pulls her into his arms and cheekily asks if his words have touched her heart. He then playfully asks for a kiss, and they share a tender moment. A few days later, at the school nurse's office, a couple of teachers and the nurse are engaged in a hushed conversation. They discuss how Hayen's marriage to the chairman has made things awkward for them. Ms. Choi even insinuates that their rushed wedding was only because Hayen was pregnant, and predicts that she'll be kicked out once the baby is born. The nurse, Ms. Kim, attempts to defend Hayen, but her words fall on deaf ears. Unknown to them, Hayen overhears the entire conversation just as she's about to enter the nurse's office. Feeling drained, Hayen retreats to a nearby bench. She's been feeling unusually tired lately and was hoping to catch a quick nap before her next class. The overheard conversation weighs heavily on her mind. She knew her marriage had made her colleagues uncomfortable, but hearing their cruel words hurt more than she'd expected. She wonders if Do-jun only married her because of Do-jul and if he would have married any woman who was carrying his child. As these thoughts cloud her mind, she finds unexpected company in Se-hyun, who joins her on the bench, looking as lost as she feels. Hayen gives Se-hyun a once-over, and with a raised eyebrow asks, "What's up with you?" Se-hyun counters with a question of her own, "Did you and Do-jun have a spat?" Hayen waves away the question, turning the focus back on Se-hyun. Is Taewoo being a pain in the neck again? Se-hyun shrugs, revealing that Taewoo has a girlfriend now, which means she's off the hook. He initially seemed miffed when he introduced his new girl, but now they're practically joined at the hip. She then recounts how she played matchmaker for Taewoo and Dahae. She'd set it up so that Dahai would walk into a restaurant where she was hanging out with Taewoo, making it seem like a chance encounter. She asked Taewoo if Dahai could join them, and he just gave her a puzzled look. Hayen, amused, asked Sehyun what her endgame was. Sehyun admits that while she wanted Taewoo to have a girlfriend, she's not entirely thrilled with the outcome. Hayen reminds her that midterms are looming, and she shouldn't be wasting energy thinking about all this. Seeing Sehyun's surprised expression, Hayen quickly adds that she's speaking as a teacher. But then, shifting gears, she asks Sehyun, as an aunt, whether she really dislikes hanging out with Taewoo. Sehyun admits that while Taewoo can be infuriating at times, she doesn't exactly hate it. Hayen advises her to take some time to figure out what Taewoo means to her. Sehyun denies any romantic feelings, but Hayen encourages her to think it through. As Sehyun stammers out a confession, Hayen tells her that taking action, whether it's to reflect or act on her feelings, is better than doing nothing at all. Sehyun points out that Hayen is also guilty of the same thing. Hayen looks down at her wedding ring and agrees, stating that being proactive is generally better than being passive. They should both aim to be more assertive. Suddenly, a student tosses some snacks and drinks at Sehyun. She asks him what they are, and he shrugs, saying he doesn't know. She wonders if they're from Taewoo, but the student has no idea. That evening, Hayen arrives at her apartment with Doojun, when Hayen pops up out of nowhere, startling her. Hayen asks if this is where she lives with Doojun. When Hayen confirms, Hayen mentions she's here to see someone and suggests they go in together. As they ride the elevator, Hayen chatters non-stop while Hayen tries to figure out what's going on. Something about Hayen sets off alarm bells in Hayen's mind, the same unease she felt during their encounter at the wedding. She notices that Hayen hasn't selected a floor and tries to ask her about it, but Hayen brushes her off, launching into a story about her time in France. Once they reach Hayen's floor, Hayen follows her out of the elevator. Hayen asks who she's visiting, and Hayen apologizes for getting sidetracked and leaves. Hayen enters her home, unaware that Hayen is watching her. Later that night, Doojun comes home to find Hayen asleep on the couch. He gently carries her to their bedroom. She wakes up in the middle of the night, finding herself snuggled against her husband. She wonders when she fell asleep and decides to ask Doojun the question that's been on her mind first thing in the morning. After a long day at school, Hayen spots a car idling outside. She assumes it's Doojun, come to pick her up. But as she approaches the vehicle, she realizes it's not Doojun, but his trusty secretary, Lee. As they cruise through the city, Hayen casually asks about Doojun's schedule. Lee chuckles, saying Doojun's been burning the midnight oil, just so he can clock out earlier. Apparently, he's currently in a meeting that should wrap up within half an hour. Lee adds that Doojun's been itching to get home since lunch. Hayen guesses Doojun must be tired, but Lee corrects her, saying Doojun could work late nights for a week without batting an eyelid. Lee then drops a bombshell. Ever since Hayen came into the picture, their office hours have reduced and Doojun's moods have improved. The staff couldn't be happier. Hayen dismisses this, pointing out that Doojun still works from home. She recalls a recent incident where Doojun had trouble focusing because she was around. When she offered to leave, he protested, saying her absence would be even more distracting. Then he'd kissed her. Snapping out of her reverie, she finds Lee grinning at her. He teases her about daydreaming about Doojun, but she denies it, claiming she was thinking about her students. Lee feigns disappointment, joking that it's sad Doojun lost to a bunch of kids. Arriving at her apartment building, Hayen scans the area for any sign of Hayen before heading up. All she wants is for Doojun to be home, so they can talk. But as she steps into her apartment, she's greeted by the tantalizing aroma of food. Thinking it's Doojun, she heads to the kitchen, only to find Hayen there, wearing their apron. Hayen greets her casually, informing Hayen that Doojun isn't back yet. Stunned, Hayen asks how Hayen got in. But instead of answering, Hayen just continues chopping onions, asking Hayen to repeat her question. Overwhelmed, Hayen rushes to the bathroom to throw up. From the bathroom, she hears Doojun come home and question Hayen about her presence. Hayen skillfully evades his queries, steering the conversation towards the pasta she's preparing. When Doojun persists, Hayen lies, claiming Hee-won gave her the passcode and address yesterday. Listening to them, Hee-won feels like an outsider in her own home. It's as if Hayen knows more about Doojun than she does. She wonders if the passcode to their house is Doojun's birthday and realizes she didn't know he liked pasta. When she finally emerges from the bathroom, both Doojun and Hayen turn to look at her. But before anyone can say anything, she bolts, with Doojun hot on her heels. But Hayen stops him, grabbing his arm. Hee-won's eyes brim with tears as she steps past a shady-looking fellow on the street. She whispers to her unborn child, a soft mantra, crying doesn't solve anything. It's a lesson she learned young, when her parents' fights would reduce her to tears, and she'd wake up the next day to find nothing had changed. She ponders why she feels so raw, so vulnerable. Could it be she's been relying on Doojun more than she thought? Her heart sinks as she suspects he's probably still with Hayen, considering he didn't come chasing after her as she'd half expected. Suddenly, she realizes she's in unfamiliar surroundings, her slippers slapping against the concrete. A spike of panic jolts through her when she finds her pockets empty, no phone, no wallet. She recalls passing a convenience store nearby and decides to head back there to borrow a phone. Just as she's about to turn around, she spots a figure approaching from the shadows of the alley. Panic flares up again as she wills herself to move, but her feet refuse to cooperate. She stands there, heart hammering in her chest, hoping the stranger just walks past her. As the man reaches out to touch her shoulder, Doojun appears out of nowhere and yanks him away. He confronts the stranger, demanding to know why he was trying to touch his wife. The man explains that he saw Hee-won crying and looking lost, and had only wanted to help. Doojun reaches out to comfort Hee-won, but hesitates. The stranger suggests calling the cops, but Doojun quickly clarifies that Hee-won is his wife. As the man leaves, he mutters something about treating wives better, even going as far as saying he'd treat her like a queen if she were his wife. He then proceeds to dial the cops. Hee-won wipes away her tears, informing Doojun about the impending police call. He implores her to hug him before he gets arrested. When she doesn't respond, he confesses how scared he was when he couldn't find her and invites her to vent her anger on him. He's sweating profusely, which makes her wonder if he's been running around looking for her. She finally gives in and hugs him. He reciprocates, expressing his relief and admitting his mistake of trusting Hayen too easily. Doojun explains that 5 years ago, Hayen was obsessed with him to an unhealthy extent. His lawyer had even filed a suit against her. But Hayen's father, who was Doojun's high school teacher, begged him to go easy on her. When Doojun saw Hayen at their wedding, he contacted her father, who assured him Hayen was better now. Doojun swears to Hee-won that he'll never let anything like this happen again. They share another hug, and he suggests they head home. But she shakes her head, indicating she's not ready just yet. Hee-won wrinkles her nose and says that she's not ready to head back home yet, thanks to the lingering smell. Instead, she proposes they spend the night at a hotel. Doojun agrees without hesitation, suggesting they take a walk over to the nearest hotel. As they start on their way, he offers to carry her, but she shrugs him off, saying she's fine. He then points at her slippers and advises her to get proper shoes for the walk. She clings to his arm tightly as they move along, causing him to ask if she's still worried about him getting arrested. She admits that she just wants to avoid any more trouble that night. Suddenly, she erupts into giggles. When Doojun inquires about the cause of her amusement, she teases him about his high standards in women, pointing out that both Hayen and Hae-mi are stunning. She adds that he's constantly surrounded by beauty, but never seems to notice, making her wonder if he's ever been captivated by a woman's beauty before. Doojun admits he has indeed found a woman beautiful. He describes her as a sexy lady with high standards, who may seem shy at first glance, but is actually sharp-witted. He also mentions her slight clumsiness, which he finds incredibly endearing, especially when she's dressed in black. Oblivious to the fact that Doojun is describing her, Hee-won visualizes this mystery woman in her mind and feels a pang of jealousy. She silently grumbles, wishing he had just said outright that she was the beautiful woman he was referring to. As they approach a crosswalk, Do-jun places a hand on her shoulder to guide her, only for her to brush it away. He chuckles at her reaction, which only prompts her to ask why he's laughing. He tells her he's suddenly in a good mood, causing her to retort that she's not, and he should stop laughing. She blames him for her sour mood, accusing him of talking about another woman, despite being a novice at dating. In response, Do-jun takes her hand and reassures her that it's too late for her to leave him now, and he can't imagine his life without her. Her cheeks flush at his words. She reassures him that she has no plans to leave, especially since they're responsible for Do-jul. Do-jun admits that he had momentarily forgotten about Do-jul, but Hayen doesn't catch his comment. He then shifts the conversation back to how she had dashed out of the house without her phone or purse. She apologizes and admits that she was feeling unwell. When he asks if it was morning sickness, she confesses that she isn't sure, but the smell of the pasta had made her nauseous. Do-jun apologizes for Hayen's actions once more, and when she asks what he intends to do about Hayen, he firmly states that he won't let her get away with it this time. Hayen then steers the conversation back to the woman he described earlier, remarking that he didn't end up with her. To her surprise, Do-jun counters by asking who said he didn't. Flustered, she accuses him of lying about only dating Hayen, and wonders if the woman he described is another celebrity. To that, Do-jun replies that the woman is standing right next to him. Realizing that he's been describing her all along, Hayen accuses him of teasing her. Do-jun reminds her of the little black dress she wore when they first met. He places a hand on her waist, commenting that her figure took his breath away that day, and leans in to kiss her. But just as their lips are about to meet, an elderly man passing by clears his throat loudly, grumbling about young people these days. Do-jun quickly apologizes, explaining that his wife is so beautiful, he forgot they were standing on a sidewalk. The old man continues to mutter as he walks away, leaving the couple to head into the hotel. Engrossed in the staff dinner, Mrs. Kim, wearing a tinge of sadness, opens up about her single status. Do-jun, always the matchmaker, chips in with a suggestion, why not go out with his secretary, Lee? Mrs. Kim, with a sly smile, drops the bombshell that she prefers her men on the handsome side. Hayen, taken aback by Mrs. Kim's revelation, can't help but inquire about her connection with Secretary Lee. Mrs. Kim, ever the tactful conversationalist, skillfully sidesteps the question, redirecting the conversation away from the potentially revealing topic. The scent of eggs hits Hayen like a ton of bricks, triggering a sudden wave of nausea. Without missing a beat, she darts to the restroom, and Do-jun, ever the attentive husband, follows closely behind. Inside the restroom, amidst the retching sounds, an unexpected moment unfolds. Ms. Choi, perhaps fueled by a surge of guilt, takes the opportunity to apologize to Hayen. A hesitant air lingers, but Ms. Choi, with sincerity in her eyes, assures Hayen that tripping her earlier wasn't intentional. After some initial hesitation, Hayen, moved by the apology, softens her heart and grants forgiveness. Little do they know, Do-jun, standing just outside, catches wind of their conversation. As Ms. Choi exits, she's met with a stern warning from Do-jun, a reminder to keep it polite, or job security might be on the line. Surprising Hayen, Do-jun reveals himself outside the restroom, and together they make their way back. The night unfolds as Hayen and Do-jun embark on the journey back home. Inside the car, Do-jun throws a playful curveball. He pretends to have passed out from the earlier indulgence in drinks. A cloud of concern hovers over Hayen as she wonders whether it's the effect of the sun or the alcohol. Stealing quick glances at her unconscious husband, worry etches across Hayen's face. Yet, those brief glances morph into a lingering stare. In the quiet of the car, her thoughts take an unexpected turn as she finds herself marveling at his handsome features. The way he's been striving to be a good husband swirls in her mind, a testament to his commitment. Recollections of Do-jun's speech at the dinner replay in Hayen's thoughts. His words about not wanting her to be treated differently resonate deeply, creating a sense of warmth and cherished affection. Reflecting on the days before marriage, Hayen never envisioned the tranquility and love that now defines her union with Do-jun. Marrying in haste, with the looming uncertainty of not knowing each other well, she half expected a rocky road ahead. Thoughts of impending problems in their relationship played like a script in her mind. Before tying the knot, Hayen had worried that her chosen profession might not sit well with Dojun's parents. The fear lingered that they might urge her to quit and focus on being a homemaker. However, reality took a surprising turn. Contrary to her apprehensions, the anticipated challenges never surfaced. His parents embraced her and her career without any reservations. As Hayen continues to steal glances at Dojun in the car, a truth she'd hesitated to admit now surfaces: she loves him deeply. It's a sentiment she kept at bay, perhaps out of fear, but the reality of their marriage has debunked all her preconceived notions. Contrary to her expectations, Dojun has become the architect of happiness in their marriage, going above and beyond to make her smile. This realization hits her hard. It's not just about the child they're expecting, it's about the genuine love he showers on her. Unable to contain her emotions any longer, Hayen takes the bold step of placing her hand on his. To her surprise, he responds by squeezing hers. A jolt of astonishment courses through her. She thought he was peacefully sleeping, oblivious to her silent musings. Upon arriving home, Dojun can't seem to wait a second longer. He rushes inside, pulling Hayen along. Before she knows it, he plants a kiss on her, catching her off guard. In a playful attempt to deflect the sudden affection, Hayen tries to shove him away. However, Dojun, with a mischievous glint in his eyes, refuses to be deterred. He counters her resistance with a simple declaration: he might just go crazy if he doesn't have her. Just as Hayen decides to take the lead and reciprocate the affection, her phone rudely interrupts the moment. A call delivers unexpected news: her mother is in the hospital, and they need to rush there immediately. Despite the urgency, they manage to freshen up quickly and make their way to the hospital. Hayen can't shake off the unease settling in her stomach. Memories of her mother's past neglect and distant demeanor flood her thoughts. Even on her wedding day, her mother attended as a mere guest, a presence, but not a participant in the joyous occasion. The drive to the hospital is filled with a mix of concern, apprehension, and the lingering emotional residue of past wounds. Hayen grapples with conflicting emotions. The duty to attend to her mother in a time of need clashes with the unresolved feelings stemming from their strained relationship. They reach her mother's ward, and words are exchanged, a blend of tension and history echoing in the room. The confrontation takes an unexpected turn when Professor Han-sug, the person who called with the news, intervenes. Dojun, ever the supportive husband, steps forward and introduces himself as Professor Lee's son-in-law. Professor Han-sug, sensing the tension, quickly reassures them that the situation isn't as dire as it might seem. Apologies are offered, and the air begins to settle. However, Hayen's mother, unyielding and unapologetic, remains unchanged. As it's time for her bath, Hayen steps up, offering to take care of her mother, but Professor Han-sug joins in, tells her not to worry, cleaning her face with gentle care. Dojun, sensing the need for privacy, suggests stepping outside to give them some alone time. On their way out, Professor Han-sug, acknowledging the sensitivity of the situation, suggests meeting later for a cup of tea. As they journey home, Hayen's mind takes an unexpected detour, retracing the peculiar conversation with Professor Han-sug. The details unfold like a script she hadn't expected. During their tea time, Professor Han-sug dropped a bombshell. He claimed to be the reason behind her mother's lack of sleep. He admitted to persistently expressing his desire for a relationship, asserting that she's his soulmate. The revelation leaves Hayen flabbergasted. What could he possibly find in my mother, she wonders, a perplexed expression etched on her face. Professor Han-sug, undeterred, offers an explanation, describing her mother as affectionate, a quality that apparently attracted him. Hayen struggles to wrap her head around the notion that Professor Han-sug is describing her mother, the woman she knows, as cold-blooded, rude, and anything but affectionate. The words echo in her mind, clashing with memories of her mother's seeming indifference during crucial moments. Recollections flood her thoughts, the times when she was sick, the painful episode of filing a report for sexual harassment, and the period she broke her legs. Not once was her mother there for comfort or support, it was her friend's mother who stepped in. The dissonance between these memories and Professor Hansug's description creates a sense of disbelief. How can this same woman be said to be affectionate, she ponders, her mind wrestling with the incongruity. Beside her, Doo-jun senses her distress but remains steadfast in his reassurance. Disregarding her doubts, he affirms that Professor Hansug is a good man and emphasizes the importance of her mother being around him. Back at home, Doo-jun playfully teases Hayen about her apparent tendency to cry. Instead of dismissing it, she opens up about a part of her past. The narrative unfolds as she recounts her childhood, marked by the daily quarrels of her parents. In those turbulent times, tears had a peculiar effect. They didn't bring comfort but fueled the arguments further. The louder her cries, the more intense their fights became. This early lesson left a lasting imprint on young Hayen, teaching her that shedding tears wouldn't resolve anything. The bitterness of her parents' constant bickering culminated in their eventual divorce, a stark outcome of a marriage forged in the wake of her mother's pregnancy. In a vulnerable moment, Hayen opens up to Doo-jun, laying bare her fears of not measuring up as a good mother and wife. It's a raw admission of insecurity that weighs heavy on her heart. Doo-jun, ever the supportive partner, counters her anxieties by recalling the events leading up to their unexpected hospital visit, reassuring her that she's not falling short in her roles. His words create a bridge between her self-doubt and the tangible instances where she's proven her love and care. In this moment of shared vulnerability, Hayen feels a surge of emotion. Overwhelmed by a newfound courage, she leans in, pressing kisses on Doo-jun's lips. The words she had hesitated to say spill out, as she professes her love for him, breaking free from the shackles of fear that had previously held her back. "I love you, Doo-jun," Hayen declares, the words slipping out unexpectedly. Surprised by her own admission, she quickly composes herself. To her delight, Doo-jun responds with a simple, "I love you too," sending her heart into a momentary flutter. Caught off guard by his reciprocal declaration, Hayen can't believe her ears. "What did you just say?" she stammers, seeking confirmation. Doo-jun, with a warm smile, playfully chides her surprise, insisting that she should have known about his love through his actions. He assures her that his love isn't merely spoken, it's woven into the fabric of his behavior towards her. Still in disbelief, Hayen points out that he has never explicitly said those 3 words before. Unfazed, Doo-jun maintains that words aren't the sole conveyors of love, his actions speak volumes. Eager to solidify the moment, he pleads with her to repeat her confession, and she willingly obliges. The exchange becomes a joyful loop of "I love you," with Doo-jun promising to verbalize his love every time, sealing their shared emotions in a promise of spoken affection. As the morning sun lazily peeks through the curtains, Hayen and Doo-jun find themselves reluctant to part ways. Doo-jun, in a playful plea, begs Hayen to stay a bit longer, promising to come up with convincing excuses for their tardiness. However, Hayen, with a gentle smile, remains firm in her decision. Eventually, surrendering to the reality of the day, they decide to share a relaxing bath together. The water becomes a comforting cocoon, washing away the last traces of sleep as they navigate the morning with a blend of intimacy and laughter. Arriving at work, a noticeable glow envelopes Doo-jun, catching the eye of his observant secretary. Meanwhile, in the lobby, a familiar face appears, Hayen's father. Spotting Doo-jun, the man moves towards him, urgency etched on his face. "I have something to say in regards to Hayen," he blurts out. In the bustling atmosphere of Doo-jun's workplace, Mr. Kim, Hayen's father, manages to secure a moment of attention. His face is a canvas of desperation as he earnestly implores Doo-jun to release his daughter from prison. With remorse in his eyes, he acknowledges Hayen's disruptive behavior and apologizes for the distress she may have caused. Doo-jun, torn between compassion and the responsibility to protect his family, hesitates. He candidly reveals that Hayen's actions pose a threat, particularly to his wife, and emphasizes his commitment to safeguarding her. Despite Mr. Kim's heartfelt pleas, Doo-jun stands firm on the decision to keep Hayen incarcerated. Undeterred, Mr. Kim continues his plea, expressing concern that Hayen can't be sent to a hospital without Doo-jun's consent. He shoulders the blame for his daughter's actions, a weight evident in his every word. In a poignant moment, he kneels before Do-jun, a symbol of his desperation and sincerity. Moved by the unexpected vulnerability of his former teacher, Do-jun grapples with the conflicting emotions. Eventually, he relents, agreeing to release Hayen. However, with a stern condition, she will be confined to a hospital, and her release won't be granted without Do-jun's explicit consent. On her way back from school, Se-hyun's heart sinks when she spots Tae-woo walking alongside another girl, Da-hai. Uncomfortable waves wash over her as the sight stirs up the feelings she has been harboring for him. Just as the discomfort begins to settle, a classmate intercepts her, proposing a spontaneous date and a chance for some conversation. Caught off guard, Se-hyun hesitates, the offer lingering in the air. However, before she can respond, Tae-woo reappears on the scene. Seeing her in an awkward situation, he swiftly intervenes and tries to pull her away. A brief struggle ensues, accompanied by a rapid exchange of words. Amid the commotion, Se-hyun, feeling embarrassed, urges both of them to let go of her hands. In a surprising turn of events, In-hyuk, undeterred by the unfolding drama, boldly professes his feelings for Se-hyun. The revelation hangs in the air, audible to everyone around. Se-hyun, taken aback by In-hyuk's audacity, is left surprised that he has the courage to declare his affection so openly. Tae-woo, unwilling to let the situation escalate, promptly yanks Se-hyun away from In-hyuk, intensifying the tension in the air. As Tae-woo leads Se-hyun away, In-hyuk persistently follows, hoping for a chance to discuss. Se-hyun, caught in the middle, decides to pause and informs In-hyuk that they'll talk later. Tae-woo seizes the opportunity to warn In-hyuk to steer clear of Se-hyun romantically. Once the warning is delivered, Tae-woo and Se-hyun continue their way. However, Se-hyun, uneasy about Tae-woo making decisions on her behalf, halts their progress. She asserts her desire to make her own choices, prompting Tae-woo to unveil his feelings. He confesses that he doesn't want her to date In-hyuk because he also harbors feelings for her. Tae-woo clarifies that he and Da-hai are just close friends, nothing more. Trusting his words, Se-hyun finds herself admiring the sincerity reflected in his eyes. Their connection deepens as they stand by the roadside, hands entwined. Fate takes a turn as Do-jun and Hayen spot them and offer a ride home. In the car, Hayen inquires about their usual routine of going home together. Tae-woo, with a smile, replies in the negative but hints at a change, suggesting that they'll start going home together soon. Suspicion lingers in Do-jun's mind about the evolving dynamics between Tae-woo and Se-hyun, but Hayen, ever tactful, skillfully sidesteps the issue by steering the conversation toward dinner plans. As they contemplate the evening meal, Se-hyun playfully teases Do-jun about the name of their future child, finding amusement in his unwavering approval. The atmosphere takes a turn when Se-hyun brings up the upcoming school trip, her eyes sparkling with excitement at the prospect of a swimming pool. All seems well until Hayen casually mentions that Mr. Shin, the gym instructor, will also be part of the excursion. In an unexpected twist, Do-jun, sensing a potential complication, halts the car and presses for clarification. "Is Mr. Shin the teacher I saw you with in front of the school?" he inquires, skepticism coloring his tone. In the aftermath of the car revelation about Mr. Shin joining the school trip, a subtle tension lingers in the air. Se-hyun's admission of finding Mr. Shin attractive triggers a wave of jealousy in Tae-woo, his unease palpable in the car. As the journey continues, Do-jun remains lost in thought, his silence echoing the weight of unspoken concerns. After dropping off Tae-woo and Se-hyun, the atmosphere in the car shifts. Do-jun, behind the wheel, becomes a silent contemplator. The usual banter and shared moments give way to a pensive quietude. At home, Hayen, perceptive to his sudden change, repeatedly inquires about the cause, but Do-jun, concealing the turmoil within, dismisses it with a simple nothing. His reticence puzzles Hayen, accustomed to his open communication, and a sense of wonder creeps in as she navigates the unfamiliar terrain of his silent contemplation. Do-jun brings his lingering unease into the house, a cloud of contemplation etched across his face. Hayen, sensing his reticence, wearily attempts to breeze past him, but he catches her, gently pulling her aside. The plea escapes his lips, urging her to reconsider the upcoming school trip, using her pregnant state as a shield from potential discomfort. Her response is unwavering, attendance is non-negotiable for her. As the discussion unfolds, Do-jun's attempts to persuade her prove futile. The residual tension hangs heavy over dinner, with Hayen, upset by his insistence, refusing to partake in the meal. Do-jun, caught in the throes of concern and an unspoken jealousy, grapples with the internal struggle of wanting to shield his wife from potential discomfort. His fear stems from the presence of Mr. Shin, the gym instructor, on the trip. Do-jun harbors a silent unease, aware that Mr. Shin had once expressed his feelings for Hayen, while he refrains from articulating his true fears, afraid to admit to his own jealousy. The unspoken tension casts a shadow over their interactions. The simmering tension from the night lingers as Hayen and Do-jun retire to bed, both carrying the weight of unspoken grievances. Hayen, perplexed by her husband's unexpected upset, finds herself in a state of confusion. On the flip side, Do-jun, disappointed that his insecurities remain unnoticed, grapples with the lingering unease. The chilly atmosphere spills over into the next morning, casting a shadow over their interactions. At the bus station, however, a moment of reconciliation unfolds. Do-jun, about to depart for work, leaves Hayen in a state of confusion with a cryptic statement that hangs in the air. Hayen stands at the bus station, perplexed by Do-jun's cryptic statement, when her colleague, Ms. Kim, begins snapping photos of her. Quick on her feet, Hayen suggests they go for a drink, hoping for some clarity. As they settle in, Ms. Kim reveals the unexpected reason behind Do-jun's peculiar behavior. He had asked her to keep an eye on Hayen during the trip. Fury bubbles within Hayen at the revelation. The realization that her husband doesn't trust her stings, and she feels a pang of sadness for the unjust suspicion cast on Mr. Shin. The anger intensifies as Ms. Kim continues to capture moments, and Hayen, unable to contain her frustration, confiscates Ms. Kim's phone. To her dismay, she discovers that the pictures are being sent directly to Do-jun, fueling her upset emotions further. Do-jun's call interrupts Hayen's bubbling anger, and she picks up the phone, reprimanding him for his seemingly childish act of assigning someone to watch over her during the trip. In response, Do-jun lays bare his fears, offering an apology and clarifying that he never intended to upset her. He confesses to feeling a twinge of jealousy at the prospect of her going on a trip with Mr. Shin, emphasizing that their lack of shared trips triggered his concerns. Amidst his explanations, he discloses his own upcoming travel plans and assures her of a prompt return after concluding his business abroad. Hayen, softened by Do-jun's honest admission, shifts her tone to a more caring one, urging him to stay safe and return in one piece. Mutual wishes for a safe journey are exchanged before they end the call. Back in the restaurant, Hayen redirects her attention to Ms. Kim. With a stern yet playful tone, she requests that the impromptu photo shoot cease, emphasizing that the agreed-upon reward from her bargain with Do-jun hinges on compliance. Ms. Kim, having received a text from Do-jun instructing her to stop, relents. In Hayen's room, a palpable air of disappointment hangs as her father arrives for a visit, but the person she eagerly anticipated, Do-jun, is notably absent. Despite her father's attempts to explain the situation, Hayen remains resolute in her discontent. A veil of sadness envelopes her, fueled by the belief that Hayen is somehow responsible for Do-jun's absence. In the course of their conversation, Hayen's anger surfaces, directed at Hayen, whom she perceives as a hindrance to her desired connection with Do-jun. In Hayen's room, a palpable air of disappointment hangs as her father arrives for a visit, but the person she eagerly anticipated, Do-jun, is notably absent. Despite her father's attempts to explain the situation, Hayen remains resolute in her discontent. A veil of sadness envelopes her, fueled by the belief that Hayen is somehow responsible for Do-jun's absence. In the course of their conversation, Hayen's anger surfaces, directed at Hayen, whom she perceives as a hindrance to her desired connection with Do-jun. Miran excitedly catches up with her friend Hayen at home, the air buzzing with the warmth of long overdue reunions. It's been quite some time since they last saw each other, and their reunion promises a cozy time together. As they settle in, they decide to catch up on the latest news, their attention drawn to a construction site incident that unfolds on the television screen. However, Hayen's joy at the reunion is tinged with worry as she attempts to reach her husband, who seems to be elusive in answering his calls. Concern etches her face, and Miran senses her friend's unease. Ever the supportive friend, Miran skillfully shifts the mood, offering words of comfort and distraction. To lighten the atmosphere, she suggests a tour around the house, a first-time visit for her. Hayen guides Miran through the various corners of her tastefully decorated home, where opulence and elegance intertwine effortlessly. Miran, though visibly impressed, wears an expression that hints at underlying concerns. Sensing her friend's disquiet, Hayen prompts her to share what's on her mind. Amidst the luxurious backdrop, Miran opens up about the challenges she's facing with her boyfriend, Manhwa. Hayen, always the reassuring friend, lends a comforting ear and offers words of solace, assuring Miran that they will find a way to navigate through the rough patch. As their conversation unfolds, a sweet interruption occurs. A little child, perhaps from the neighborhood, arrives with a thoughtful gift for Dujul, Hayen's unborn child. The tender moment captures Miran's attention, and she finds herself drawn to the innocence of the gesture. Seizing the opportunity to lighten the mood, Miran suggests sharing cake with the child. In the midst of their conversation and the delightful exchange with the little girl at the door, Hayen's home suddenly becomes shrouded in an unexpected suspense. The door creaks open, stirring an air of uncertainty, as Hayen, not anticipating her husband's return until the following day, is left wondering about the uninvited entrance. The atmosphere grows tense, with a barrage of thoughts racing through Hayen's mind. Could it be robbers, or perhaps Hayen, who had unexpectedly barged in before? As the approaching footsteps draw nearer, a mix of fear and confusion lingers in the air. In a reflex, Hayen grabs a nearby cup, her instincts kicking in for self-defense, only to find herself face-to-face with her husband. Dujun, having finished his commitments earlier than expected, stands before her, his face registering the unexpected impact of the cup. He reassures her, explaining that he rushed home because he couldn't bear to be away any longer, a surprise visit born out of sheer longing and the desire to be with his wife. In the midst of the tender moment, Dujun, eager to reconnect with Hayen, finds himself faced with her hesitant demeanor. She attempts to convey the presence of other people in the house, creating a brief pause in their intimate exchange. However, before the situation unfolds further, the door swings open, and in walks Miran, cradling Yeonsu in her arms. Dujun, caught off guard by the sudden entrance, startles at the sight of Miran and the little one. The atmosphere shifts as they realize that Dujun is bleeding, likely a consequence of the earlier cup-smashing incident. Hayen swiftly takes charge, tending to Dujun's wound with a mixture of concern and care. Her immediate suggestion is a visit to the hospital, a proposal met with Dujun's staunch resistance. He insists that he'll be fine, although the furrowed lines on his face betray a less convincing facade of well-being. Noticing his less-than enthused expression, Hayen probes, seeking the cause of his discontent. Dujun, voicing his feelings, wonders aloud about the sudden influx of people in their home. His return from the trip had carried the expectation of some quality alone time with Hayen, only to be met with an unwelcome surprise, a house buzzing with activity. In response, Hayen unravels the reasons behind the unexpected crowd. Miran, there to assist with shopping, plans to stay for dinner. Adding to the mix, Yeonsu arrives bearing a gift for their unborn child. Hayen further discloses that Miran's boyfriend, Manhwa, is on the way, completing the ensemble of unexpected guests. As the evening unfolds, Dujun finds himself growing increasingly frustrated with the addition of Manhwa to the gathering. Despite the effort to subtly signal their departure, the dinner continues, and Dujun's tactical nudges to prompt an exit accidentally target Miran instead of Hayen. Unaware of the misdirected intention, Hayen becomes increasingly upset at her husband's seemingly erratic behavior. Sensing the need to bridge the growing gap between them, Dujun takes the initiative to address the underlying tension. Seizing the opportunity during dinner, he intervenes, suggesting a solution to Miran and Manhwa's differences. Do-jun advises the couple to go out for a date, emphasizing that it's already late to be outside. Miran and Manhwa pick up on Do-jun's subtle hints, realizing that it's time to make their exit. Hayen, however, is reluctant to see them leave early and tries to persuade them to stay and enjoy the rest of their meal. The couple graciously declines, assuring Hayen that she can save the remaining food for their next visit. As the door closes behind them, Do-jun lets out a sigh of relief. With their departure, he now sees the opportunity for some much-desired alone time with Hayen. Seizing the moment, he playfully asks Hayen to scold him for his earlier behavior. Despite her lingering upset, Hayen's response takes an unexpected turn as she reaches for his lips, revealing a mixture of emotions that words alone couldn't express. Satisfied with her unconventional form of scolding, Hayen proceeds to clear the table. However, Do-jun, not content with the playful reprimand, sweeps her off her feet in a spontaneous display of affection. As they head towards the bedroom, Hayen dutifully reminds him about the unfinished task of clearing the table. Ignoring her reminder, Do-jun gently places her on the bed, and with a mischievous glint in his eyes, he playfully requests his reward for mediating the situation with her friends. Hayen, amused by his antics, agrees to grant him the reward, but time seems to be slipping away. Undeterred, Do-jun decides to take matters into his own hands, injecting a playful and intimate energy into the moment as they share a light-hearted and affectionate connection. Do-jun pays a visit to his parents, and the atmosphere is filled with playful banter as family members tease him about his past blind dates. They recount stories of how they thought he might never settle down due to his behavior towards those girls, much to Do-jun's embarrassment. Hayen, curious to hear more, engages with the family banter. As they gather around the table for a meal, the storytelling continues. Each tale adds a layer of humor and nostalgia to the family gathering. The warmth of shared memories and laughter fills the room, creating a comfortable ambience. Meanwhile, in the hospital where Hayen is being treated, she proves to be a challenging patient. Reluctant to take her prescribed medication, the doctor notices her deteriorating health. Hayen's only concern seems to be leaving the hospital to return home. In a defiant act, she pretends to take the medication, cleverly hiding the pills under her lips, deceiving the doctor and adding a layer of complexity to her character. After school, Hayen steps outside and feels the warmth of the sun beating down on her. Ms. Kim joins her, showcasing a variety of dresses and seeking Hayen's opinion on which one is best for her upcoming trip. As they discuss wardrobe choices, Ms. Kim points out how fortunate Hayen is to have married Do-jun, who's evidently willing to spare no expense for her. Hayen, in turn, expresses her belief that Ms. Kim is lucky to be single, granting her the freedom to travel without any constraints. To celebrate Hayen's impending trip, they decide to have one last drink together on this final day they'll be able to meet for a while. As Hayen and Ms. Kim head out, Hayen receives a call from an unknown number, but the caller hangs up each time she answers. Ms. Kim suggests ignoring the calls, and shortly after, Do-jun calls to invite Hayen for a date. Standing outside the school gate, he becomes her priority, and Hayen apologizes to Ms. Kim for postponing their sit-out. As she rushes to meet Do-jun, memories flood Hayen's mind, recollections of their relationship strengthening day by day, his patience with her moods, and the comfort he provides. She feels immensely blessed to have him in her life. Do-jun, always attentive, notices her approaching and playfully encourages her to smile. Walking toward Do-jun, Hayen remains oblivious to the car approaching behind her. Do-jun, noticing the danger, waves at her to leave the road, but before she comprehends, the car is uncomfortably close. In a split second, he leaps forward, acting swiftly to shield her from the oncoming vehicle. Hayen struggles to consciousness, hearing Do-jun's voice in the distance. His words about changing the wallpaper in Do-jul's room and not buying toys echo in her ears. Despite her attempts to respond, she finds herself unable to, trapped in a state of weakness. Do-jun's expressions of concern intensify, filled with worry for her well-being. As she hovers between wakefulness and slumber, he reassures her, expressing his priority for her recovery, even though he bears a minor injury on his own arm. Do-jun's frustration intensifies as he grapples with Hayen's prolonged unconsciousness, despite the doctor's assurances of minor injuries possibly induced by shock. Amidst his concerns, he utters a statement that echoes in the air, "Hayen's more important than the baby." The weight of those words hangs in the room. Hayen, catching snippets of his anxious monologue, responds abruptly with a cough, snapping him out of his emotional turmoil. He rushes to her side, relief and concern etched on his face. Sensing her consciousness returning, he stands firm in his assertion, declaring that, given a choice, he would prioritize her well-being over the unborn child. For him, life without Hayen is inconceivable. Touched by the depth of his love, Hayen grapples with a mix of emotions. While appreciating his devotion, she remains uncomfortable with the gravity of his statement. Urging him to prioritize both her and the baby, she insists he seeks medical attention promptly. She makes it clear that his return is contingent upon the doctor's approval, emphasizing her concern for his own well-being. Reluctantly, Do-jun leaves her side, torn between the love for his wife and the responsibility of soon-to-be parenthood. Hayen awakens to the gentle nudge of Do-jun. Having had some rest, she finds him by her side, looking refreshed after getting his treatment. Playfully, she teases him about the promises he made while she was unconscious, hinting that he needs to keep his word. The surprise on his face reveals that he didn't expect her to be privy to his whispered assurances. Unfazed, he assures her once again that he intends to uphold every promise made during her slumber. Do-jun and Hayen find themselves spending the night in the hospital. Amid apologies exchanged for the stressful situation they both endured, Do-jun expresses regret for causing Hayen worry and for the injury to his arm. Their moment is interrupted by a knock on the door, revealing Mr. Kim's visit. Do-jun leaves the room irritated, emphasizing his desire for privacy to the hospital staff. When he returns, visibly upset, Hayen inquires about the cause of his mood, leading him to reveal that Hayen's father is waiting to see him. Hayen is taken aback by the unexpected visit from Hayen's father. As he begins to explain, the shocking revelation unfolds. Hayen managed to escape from the hospital and, in a desperate move, crashed into the school wall. Do-jun confirms that he had been trying to reach Hayen earlier, but the situation took a dangerous turn before he could get the details. Hayen's actions, now revealed as an attempt on Hayen's life, leave both Do-jun and Hayen angered and distressed. Do-jun vows that Hayen will face legal consequences for her actions, deeply regretting the unintentional danger he had placed Hayen in. Do-jun confronts Mr. Kim the following day, his eyes reflecting determination and resolve. He lays out his unwavering plan to ensure Hayen faces legal consequences for her attempt on Hayen's life. Do-jun makes it clear to Mr. Kim that he has exhausted his efforts in attempting to help Hayen, and this time, she won't escape the law. Tears stream down Mr. Kim's face as he pleads with Do-jun for mercy. Despite the emotional appeal, Do-jun's mind is steadfast, and he stands firm in his decision. His priority is Hayen's safety, and if pressing charges and sending Hayen to jail is the necessary step, he is ready to take it. The weight of responsibility and the need to protect his family guide his actions. Do-jun leaves Mr. Kim, instructing him not to reach out again. The next interaction will be through legal channels, making it clear that he's prepared to pursue justice for Hayen. After the intense meeting with Mr. Kim, Do-jun joins Hayen downstairs, and she curiously inquires about the outcome. With a reassuring smile, he shares that it went well, subtly concealing the gravity of the situation. Holding hands, they exit the building, immersed in their shared affection. In the midst of an almost kiss, they are interrupted by the unexpected presence of Mr. Lee. He playfully scolds them for their public display of affection. Undeterred, Do-jun, still wrapped in love, informs Mr. Lee about an impromptu decision. He's starting his holiday earlier than planned. Mr. Lee, though not entirely pleased with the deviation from the schedule, can't argue with the happiness radiating from the couple. Do-jun, ever considerate, suggests that Mr. Lee take a trip too, sensing his weariness. He recommends the Balkans, but Mr. Lee, caught off guard, hesitates. With a promise to think about it, Mr. Lee is left to ponder as Do-jun swiftly whisks Hayen away, leaving a trail of love and spontaneity in their wake. Mr. Lee relishes the prospect of a break from work, a welcome change for him. Meanwhile, Do-jun and Hee-won embark on a romantic getaway to Jeju Island, seeking the perfect moments to savor their time together. The loving atmosphere creates a sense of happiness until an unexpected voice interrupts their intimate moment. Do-jun is taken aback as he sees Se-hyun and Tae-woo on the scene. His happiness is slightly dampened, and he's not pleased that Hee-won brought them along. She tries to calm his frustration, explaining that she merely extended a friendly offer to Se-hyun and wasn't aware it would be taken seriously. Do-jun expresses his desire for alone time with Hee-won, and she reassures him that their guests won't stay longer than 2 days, promising to make the most of their limited time together. Tae-woo and Se-hyun decide to explore the surroundings, prompting a tinge of concern from Do-jun. He advises them not to wander too far, expressing a fear of losing sight of them amidst the unfamiliar setting. However, Se-hyun is less than pleased with what she interprets as an overprotective stance. Asserting her independence, she emphasizes that she's no longer a child and doesn't require such close supervision. Do-jun, attempting to inject humor into the situation, finds himself met with a stern response from the assertive Se-hyun. Adding a surprising twist to the situation, Tae-woo throws a cheeky question at Do-jun, asking if he'd be okay with them stealing a kiss right there on Jeju Island. Do-jun, caught off guard by the unexpected query, momentarily freezes, his eyebrows shooting up in surprise. Before he can formulate a response, Tae-woo quickly dismisses it with a hearty laugh, assuring everyone it was just a playful jest to lighten the mood. A moment of awkwardness dissipates, and the trio, deciding to change the scenery, makes a pact to venture further into the island's beauty. As they depart, Do-jun, feeling a bit out of touch with the younger generation, leans in to share a whispered observation with his wife. He muses that kids these days are unusually forward, highlighting the generation gap and the evolving dynamics of relationships. Later that night at the beach house, Hee-won finds herself lost in thought, sitting outside. The rhythmic sound of the waves accompanies her contemplation. Do-jun strolls over, the sand soft beneath his feet, and, curious, asks her what's on her mind. Wondering if the kids are asleep, she asks Do-jun. He playfully brushes off the question, admitting it makes him feel too much like a father, a role he's not quite ready to embrace. Hee-won, sensing his reluctance, teases him with a gentle grin, predicting that he'll be a fantastic dad when the time comes, especially to their unborn child. Under the soft glow of the moon, the gentle waves provide a calming soundtrack to their conversation. Hee-won, feeling the warmth of the sand beneath her, candidly shares her worries with Do-jun. She expresses concern that his overprotectiveness of their future daughter might hinder her chances of finding a partner. Do-jun, his gaze fixed on the horizon, can't help but smile with a hint of pride. He admits that he can't resist being a bit overprotective, already envisioning their daughter to be as beautiful and strong-willed as her mother. Hee-won playfully reveals a touch of jealousy, half-jokingly expressing her concern that once Do-jul arrives, her husband's attention will be entirely consumed by their baby. Quick to reassure her, Do-jun leans in and insists that she will always be his #1 priority. In a teasing tone, Hee-won quips that he might need to look out for a #0, injecting a light-hearted moment into their conversation about the exciting and challenging journey of impending parenthood. As the evening unfolds, Do-jun's curiosity persists, and he playfully prods Hee-won to share more about what had occupied her thoughts earlier. With a mischievous grin, she suggests that diving into the intricacies of her musings might be more than he bargained for. Undeterred, he insists that he's more than capable of handling whatever weight her thoughts carry, inviting her to share her world with him. Seated on his lap, she begins to unravel the layers of her contemplations. With a wistful smile, Hee-won confesses that her mind had wandered back to the night they first met at the lively bar. A tinge of mischief dances in her eyes as she recalls the circumstances surrounding their initial encounter. As she delves into the details, expressing the wrong turns she was taking, a sense of vulnerability emerges. She articulates her genuine fears about what might have transpired if their paths hadn't intertwined that fateful evening. In response, Do-jun wraps his arms around her, offering a comforting presence. Seizing the moment, Hee-won leans in, planting a tender kiss on his lips. In the warmth of that connection, she marvels at the miracle of being able to share such intimate moments with him freely. Emotions surge within her, a mix of gratitude, luck, and a touch of nostalgia for the journey that led them to this point. Do-jun, attuned to the sincerity of the moment, acknowledges the serendipity that brought them together. He muses that even if their paths hadn't crossed at the bar, destiny would have orchestrated an encounter elsewhere. Expressing regret for any discomfort she might have felt that night, he thanks her for trusting and following him into the unknown. With a heartfelt promise, he pledges to do everything in his power to ensure her happiness. Hayen, feeling the depth of their connection, reciprocates the sentiment, expressing her joy at having someone like Do-jun by her side. The atmosphere lightens as she playfully reveals a surprise she has planned for him that night, spending it together, deepening their bond. His eyes light up with delight, and with a carefree lift, he hoists her up as they embark on the journey to their shared bedroom, ready to savor the night and the chapters yet to unfold in their love story. The next day, in the bustling school environment, Hayen goes to lunch break and joins Ms. Kim's table. Today, the usual lively chatter is overshadowed by an air of apprehension. Hayen's plate remains largely untouched, a clear reflection of the unease gripping her as she contemplates the significance of this day, her last as a teacher, having recently submitted her resignation letter. Ms. Kim, ever the supportive friend, notices Hayen's subdued demeanor and attempts to infuse a dose of optimism into the atmosphere. With a friendly smile, she reminds Hayen of the bright side, emphasizing that the end of her teaching journey brings an end to early wake-ups, traffic battles, and the perpetual struggle of managing a classroom full of energetic kids. Despite Ms. Kim's efforts to lighten the mood, Hayen's sadness persists, casting a shadow over what should be a celebratory occasion. In an attempt to understand the reasons behind Hayen's decision, Ms. Kim gently probes, asking why she chose resignation over the alternative of maternity leave. Hayen, still grappling with a mix of emotions, responds with a heavy sigh. The cafeteria provides a backdrop to their heartfelt conversation, the noise of students and clattering trays serving as a poignant contrast to the weighty topics they are discussing. Hayen still feels sad that she's leaving. Ms. Kim asks her why didn't she go for maternity leave instead of resigning. Hayen reflects on the circumstances that led to her resignation, tracing it back to the moment she got pregnant. Despite the official reason being her pregnancy, she acknowledges the unspoken reality that her marriage to the chairman of the school played a significant role in her removal as a homeroom teacher. The weight of discomfort settles in as she takes on various roles in the school, even after her recent appeal to her colleagues. Despite the plea, she senses an underlying tension from her coworkers, leaving her with a lingering unease. Ms. Kim, in an attempt to provide comfort, reassures Hayen that marrying the chairman is not her fault, and she shouldn't be troubled by others' perceptions. Despite the well-intentioned consolation, Hayen remains unswayed. She's acutely aware that her presence is causing discomfort for everyone, drawing parallels to the previous year's experience with the mathematics teacher who, despite being pregnant, had to persist in her work. The contrast in treatment becomes evident when Hayen reflects on the meager maternity leave provided to the mathematics teacher. Understanding the preferential treatment she receives due to being the chairman's wife only adds to her discomfort. Ms. Kim expresses frustration with the county's policies on women, deeming them inadequate in handling pregnant individuals. Hayen shifts the conversation, inquiring about Ms. Kim's trip to the Balkans with Secretary Lee. Ms. Kim briskly dismisses it, claiming there's nothing noteworthy to share, emphasizing that it was an uneventful encounter and a chance crossing of paths. Undeterred, Hayen continues to probe, trying to unravel the mystery of Ms. Kim's journey. Ms. Kim, determined to keep things under wraps, remains tight-lipped, insisting that there's nothing substantial to reveal. Hayen then shifts the focus to the upcoming dinner she and her husband have planned, extending an invitation to Ms. Kim. Delighted yet hesitant, Ms. Kim worries about Do-jun's reaction to her presence. Hayen assures her that he won't mind and reveals that Secretary Lee will also be joining. Surprised, Ms. Kim suddenly cites a desire to visit her mother as an excuse for not attending. Hayen, sensing something amiss, presses further, noticing the inconsistency in Ms. Kim's explanation. Reluctantly accepting the dinner invitation, Ms. Kim grumbles softly. Hayen, sensing the discontent, apologizes, quickly steering the conversation toward the impending changes in her life. When asked about her resignation, Hayen affirms her decision, expressing a desire to focus on her baby before considering a return to teaching. Ms. Kim, understanding the gravity of Hayen's choice, acknowledges that her absence will be felt by students and staff alike. Attempting to lighten the mood, she playfully encourages Hayen to eat heartily, teasing about eating for two and preparing for her last class. However, Hayen, not amused, sternly asks Ms. Kim not to mention it again. As they share this bittersweet moment, Ms. Kim, in a light-hearted attempt, advises Hayen not to cry in her final class. Hayen reassures her that tears won't be shed, determined to maintain composure in her farewell to the students. In the midst of the emotional farewells, Hayen finds herself touched by the genuine affection from her students. After wrapping up her final class, she decides to leave them with a heartfelt message in their assessment scripts, expressing her gratitude and well wishes for each of them. The students, keenly observant, notice the poignant note she leaves behind. Renewal, capturing the collective sentiment of the class, suggests taking a group photo together. The idea gains immediate approval, and soon, the classroom is filled with students asking questions, expressing their emotions, and sharing their appreciation for their departing teacher. To Hayen's surprise, they present her with a thoughtful gift, expressing how much they will miss her. Touched by their sincerity, Hayen can't hold back tears. It's a heartfelt moment that she hadn't anticipated. A passing teacher, sensing the emotional scene, offers to take a picture of the class together. Renewal, recognizing the significance of the moment, apologizes to Hayen for making her cry, urging her to attend the school festival or visit them in the future. They agree to post the memorable picture in their class group, a symbol of the bond they shared in Hayen's final class. Sitting alone outside, tears silently streaming down her face, Hayen finds herself immersed in the emotions of her final day at the school. Unexpectedly, Do-jun arrives, offering a comforting presence and advising her not to let sadness overshadow the moment, especially for the sake of their daughter, Do-jul. Curious about how he found her, she discovers that Ms. Kim had guided him to her location after Hayen had turned down her calls. With a caring tone, Do-jun inquires about their dinner plans, checking if she's still up for it. As they share a moment outside, Do-jun, in a playful manner, attempts to steal a kiss. He quickly reconsiders, realizing they're still at the school, and composes himself by taking a more appropriate seat. Hayen has recently observed a pattern in their interactions. There's a certain fondness Do-jun has for physical contact. Whether it's gently stroking her hair, playfully squeezing her ear, holding her waist, or even rubbing her legs, he seems to find comfort in these gestures, expressing affection through these subtle touches. As they sit together, Hayen can't help but express her annoyance at Do-jun's newfound habit of constant physical contact. She questions if he's always been this way, and he, with a playful smile, admits it's a recent development, pleading with her not to be upset, explaining that he simply can't resist the urge when he's around her. Finding a moment of serenity, they turn their attention to a beautiful cherry blossom tree in front of them. Hayen marvels at its beauty, and Do-jun agrees, appreciating the tree's relentless effort to make stunning flowers, despite neglecting its trunk, which has turned dark. This observation triggers Hayen's reflection on her own life, realizing how she has often focused on others, particularly her students, neglecting self-care. Do-jun reassures her, emphasizing that nobody is perfect and acknowledging the tremendous effort she put into her work. As she contemplates returning to school after childbirth, he advises her to take things easy and not let the experience have a profound impact on her. He also pledges to be a supportive father, emphasizing the importance of balancing parenthood with personal well-being. A few days pass, and Hayen starts feeling unwell. Puzzled by the sudden change, she wonders about the cause, especially since she was perfectly fine in the morning. Despite the discomfort, she reassures Do-jul, her unborn child, not to be too impatient as she's just 10 days away from her due date. Reflecting on her mood, which has been less than ideal lately, she suspects the baby might be reacting to her emotional state. In the midst of this, Hayen faces skepticism from her friends when she announces her intention to attend her mother's wedding. Concerned about her well-being, they question the wisdom of going in her condition, especially when her husband is not around. Hayen, however, remains adamant, expressing her determination to be present on her mother's special day. Despite the differing opinions, she insists on attending the wedding, eager to witness her mother's joyous moment. To ease her friends' concerns, they agree to accompany her to the event. Days back, Hayen receives a surprising call from her mother, who casually drops the bombshell that her wedding is just a few days away. Shocked by the unexpected news, Hayen grapples with mixed emotions, but ultimately decides she must attend the ceremony to see it unfold with her own eyes. On the wedding day, she arrives at the venue with her friends, keeping a watchful eye on her mother. Seeing her mother's beaming smile triggers an unexpected wave of sadness within Hayen. Overwhelmed by her emotions, she excuses herself and heads to the restroom, grappling with self-blame for not being able to control her feelings. In this vulnerable moment, she yearns for the presence of Doo-jun, wishing he were by her side to provide comfort and support. While in the restroom, Hayen inadvertently overhears a conversation between two girls discussing her mother's marriage. Their words cast a shadow of judgment, deeming it peculiar for someone of her mother's age to embark on matrimony. Hayen, standing in the restroom, listens intently as the two girls discuss her mother's marriage, finding their remarks rather judgmental and critical. Their comments extend beyond discussing the wedding, with one of them admiring her husband and assuming he must be Professor Lee's son. Feeling a surge of frustration, Hayen decides she's had enough. She steps out of the restroom, confronting the girls directly. In a firm yet composed tone, she suggests they redirect their focus to congratulating the couple instead of engaging in gossip. Hayen, unfazed by the upset girl's reaction, calmly explains that she doesn't want her unborn child exposed to negativity. Emphasizing that their conversation was loud enough for her to hear, Hayen shares her perspective on her mother's wedding day. She points out that it's perfectly natural for Professor Lee to smile on such an occasion. To set the record straight, Hayen clarifies the misunderstanding about the young man the upset girl admired, revealing that he is Professor Lee's son-in-law, not her son. Feeling somewhat disheartened, Hayen contemplates her complex relationship with her mother. Despite the frequent disappointments, she can't help but defend her when others criticize. As she rejoins the celebration, memories flood her mind, specifically recalling a rare moment when her mother smiled during her middle school days. The memory revolves around her mother returning from a lecture at a countryside university where she worked as a part-time lecturer. It was a significant day, her first lecture as a professor. Her eyes sparkled with a glint Hayen hadn't seen before. That evening, her mother's unexpected warmth extended to asking about Hayen's dinner, a gesture that touched her, even though she had already eaten earlier. Sharing that special dinner with her mother on that rare smiling occasion remains a cherished memory for Hayen. The stories her mother shared about her day with students served as a powerful inspiration, fueling Hayen's desire to become a teacher. That evening marked an exception in their often complicated relationship. As Doo-jun arrives, apologizing for his tardiness, Hayen expresses how much she missed him. Concerned about her seemingly sad demeanor, he inquires if anything eventful occurred. Although accompanied by Miran and Manhwa, Hayen insists everything is fine. Doo-jun, perceptive to her emotions, suggests leaving, but she hesitates, assuring him she's okay. Surprised that he noticed her mood, Hayen deflects, attributing her exhaustion to his recent journey. In response, Doo-jun playfully declares that seeing her has rejuvenated him, making her blush. Sensing her discomfort, he suggests returning to the ceremony, and they head back together. Walking into the hall, with a simple plan of greeting and congratulating her mother, Hayen's intentions take an unexpected turn as Doo-jul has a different agenda. Pangs of pain in her lower belly prompt her to pause, and she requests Doo-jul to wait a bit longer, at least until she congratulates her mother. Concerned, Doo-jun notices her distress and inquires about her well-being. He gets a surprising response as Hayen reveals that she believes she's in labor. Confused and alarmed, Doo-jun rushes to her side as she continues to experience pain. In the midst of it all, someone reaches out and holds her hand. She looks up and sees her mother. Surprised by her mother's support, Doo-jun expresses his concern about Hayen possibly going into labor, although it's still 10 days before the expected due date. She offers a reassurance that the due date is just a date, drawing from her own experience as a baby coming out earlier than expected. In the midst of their conversation, Hee-won's mother reaches out and holds her hand, expressing concern about any lingering pains. Unable to articulate her response, Hee-won signals with a gesture, prompting a moment of understanding between them. Suddenly, Do-jun interjects with a mix of humor and urgency, suggesting that he should call for a truck, initially mistaken for a fire truck, before quickly correcting himself to ambulance. Mrs. Lee chimes in, adding a touch of wit as she encourages him to gather himself and assures that driving to the hospital will be faster. Amidst the discussion and the unfolding chaos, Hee-won, still in pain, grits her teeth and takes a deep breath. Mrs. Lee, growing visibly frustrated, asks if Hee-won can walk, but she remains silent, dealing with the pain. The urgency intensifies as Do-jun steps in, assuring Mrs. Lee that he'll take her to the hospital immediately. Mrs. Lee reluctantly agrees, promising to join them as soon as she's done with her current commitments. As they speed toward the hospital, Do-jun suddenly notices Hee-won's absence of heels. Ignoring the trivial detail, Mrs. Lee urges them to focus on the impending matter. However, Hee-won, engulfed in a surge of emotions, erupts, questioning her mother's sudden concern. The atmosphere becomes charged as Hee-won dredges up the past, recounting instances when her mother was notably absent during crucial times. Do-jun intervenes, trying to soothe Hee-won, while Mrs. Lee remains silent, observing her daughter being rushed to the labor room. As Hee-won prepares to give birth, she shares with Do-jun how she's feeling the intensity of the pain and the chill in the room. In a soothing tone, Do-jun encourages her, expressing gratitude and assuring her that everything will be all right. He encourages her to focus on the birthing process. Finally, after a challenging journey, Hee-won successfully gives birth, and Do-jun, overwhelmed with emotion, is brought to tears at the sight of their newborn. He expresses his thanks to her and marvels at her strength, making a heartfelt promise in the delivery room. As time passes, Hee-won cradles the baby, named Do-jul, in her arms, introducing herself as the mother and Do-jun as the father. Their interaction is filled with joy and the promise of a happy family life. However, amidst the joy, Hee-won reflects on her own birth and wonders about her mother's feelings. During that moment, day, Hee-woo wakes up to the delightful sight of little Do-jul smiling, relishing the joy of observing her baby's movements on the bed. Caught in a moment of serendipity, Do-jul playfully sticks out her tongue while sleeping, prompting Hee-woo to exclaim, "She's so small but precious," as she admires every tiny feature, from her lashes to her eyes. Suddenly, a knock on the door interrupts their cozy moment. Without hesitation, Hee-woo welcomes the visitor with a casual, "Come in." To her surprise, it's her mom at the door, paying an unexpected visit. The shock of her mother's arrival, a rarity in their history, leaves Hee-woo intrigued. Her mom inquires about how she's feeling, but Hee-woo, still processing the surprise, questions her mother's sudden appearance with a simple, "Why did you come?" Mrs. Lee responds with a mix of sincerity and remorse, explaining that she has come to see her daughter and the new grandchild. Hee-woo, surprised, questions her mother about the sudden change of plans, reminding her that she had initially mentioned going on her honeymoon. Mrs. Lee admits to extending her stay in a hotel for an additional day and confesses that she came to apologize. She acknowledges being a less-than-ideal mother, expressing regret for not being there to support Hee-woo when she needed her the most. She opens up about the oversight of not informing Hee-woo about her visit, hoping that her daughter would change her mind and join her. Mrs. Lee recognizes her carelessness and lack of consideration for Hee-woo's safety, laying bare her regrets and seeking understanding. Mrs. Lee opens up to Hee-woo about the past, expressing deep remorse for her actions. She admits to neglecting Hee-woo during a crucial time, caught up in her own pride and personal struggles. She acknowledges the pain she caused Hee-woo, revealing that she harbored unwarranted resentment and even hated her own child. Touched by regret, she apologizes sincerely, seeking forgiveness for the loneliness she inadvertently inflicted. She reveals the internal conflict she faced, torn between the desire to be a supportive mother and the weight of personal issues. Tearfully, she expresses hope for reconciliation and promises to be more present in Hee-woo's life, realizing the importance of family over pride. Hee-woo, surprised by this unexpected confession, responds with a pledge to open the door to a renewed relationship. She reassures her mother that she's willing to move forward, signaling a potential healing of their strained connection. Back at home with the newborn, Hee-woo and Do-jun face the reality of parenthood. The first challenge strikes at 2 a.m. when little Do-jul begins crying, jolting Hee-woo awake. Despite her exhaustion, she musters the energy to prepare the baby's milk, realizing that the journey of raising a child is proving to be more demanding than she initially anticipated. As Hee-woo tends to the baby's needs, the late-night wake-up call serves as a stark reminder of the sleepless nights and constant attention that come with parenting. Do-jul seemed to have her own unique schedule, opting for daytime naps and choosing the midnight hours for wide-eyed alertness. The challenges of parenthood became evident as the baby woke up every 2 to 3 hours at night, prompting Hee-woo to dutifully prepare her milk each time. Fortunately, Do-jun was by her side, offering a helping hand with the feedings while encouraging Hee-woo to catch some much-needed sleep. Despite the efforts to soothe her back to sleep after each feeding, the little one had a knack for waking up throughout the night, ensuring that both Hee-woo and Do-jun were kept on their toes. The day unfolded like any other, with Hee-woo attending to the needs of little Do-jul. As evening settled, Do-jun returned from work, entering the room with a deliberate softness to avoid disturbing their precious sleep. However, the scent of his presence didn't escape Hee-woo's notice, and with a smile on both their faces, they began catching up. Their peaceful moment took an unexpected turn when Do-jul woke up, and the crying commenced. Hee-woo, already exhausted, felt a surge of frustration, especially when Do-jun suggested taking care of the baby. Unwilling to relinquish control, Hee-woo resisted, questioning if he thought the baby would snap off her hands. This led to a moment of tension, with Do-jun eventually comforting Hee-woo. After a heartfelt conversation, Hee-woo handed Do-jul over to him and retreated to the living room, tears streaming down her face. In a contemplative moment alone, she grappled with her feelings and actions. Later, Do-jun joined her, and through open communication, suggesting she goes on a vacation to take some time alone and rest, they resolved the matter, strengthening their bond as partners in parenthood. Waking up in the morning during her vacation, Hee-woo is pleasantly surprised by how long she slept, feeling a rare sense of relaxation. Eager to check in on her family, she calls her husband to share the good news of her safe arrival. Inquiring about their baby, Do-jul, she learns that he's in the process of putting her to bed. Hee-woo, with a relieved sigh, provides a quick rundown of essential parenting instructions. She emphasizes the importance of feeding frequency and reminds him to secure the environment by removing any potentially dangerous objects. Do-jun assures her with a confident yes, sharing anecdotes about how their little one eagerly sucked on the bottle and finished her food. Do-jun reassured her that everything was under control. He promised to call her later and ended the conversation on a positive note. Feeling content, Hee-woo decided to catch up on some much-needed sleep and relaxation. However, when she woke up and checked her phone, she noticed something unusual: no messages from Do-jun. This departure from their usual constant communication left her with a sense of unease. She wondered if he wasn't as concerned about her solo trip as he usually seemed to be, leading her to feel a pang of loneliness and a hint of being cast aside. As Hee-woo sat contemplating her feelings, she grew frustrated with the negative thoughts swirling in her mind. Setting her phone down on the table, she glanced up and caught sight of a heartwarming scene: a child playing gleefully with her father. In that moment, she was reminded of her own family, sparking a longing for the joyful intimacy she shared with her husband and the imminent arrival of their child. The sudden realization that she needed to return to the villa before sunset prompted a nostalgic reflection on the happiness she once felt with Do-jun. The thought of reuniting with him and their child fueled her determination. As she reached the door, a plan formed in her mind to call Do-jun, engage in a heartfelt conversation, and find common ground to move forward together. However, upon entering the villa, she was met with a surprise: Do-jun in the kitchen. His expression revealed genuine surprise at her early return. Without uttering a word, Hee-woo rushed into his arms, expressing how much she missed him. Nestled in Do-jun's arms, Hee-woo poured out her thoughts, expressing the overwhelming impact of his absence on her. "I've been thinking a lot about you," she confessed, revealing how the simplest joys seem dull without him around. It's not interesting to see anything or eat anything. I feel like if I don't see you, I will die. Do-jun, with a calming tone, reassured her, calm down. In the midst of comforting her, Hee-woo couldn't help but notice something unusual, Do-jun wearing an earpiece. Curiosity prompted her to question him about it, to which he responded with a heartwarming confession, I miss you, that's why I'm using it. Sensing her confusion, Do-jun handed Hee-woo a teacup, gently asking if everything was okay. Still in shock from her own behavior, she replied with a reassurance, I'm fine. As he inquired why she came back early without informing him, he shared his surprise, thinking she might be an intruder. Attempting to explain herself, Hee-woo revealed her original intention of wanting to surprise him. However, her plans took an unexpected turn, and she admitted, I was going to surprise you, but I failed. Do-jun, now curious, questioned if she had forgotten the significance of the day. Caught off guard, Hee-woo struggled to find an answer. He saved her from the awkward moment, teasingly saying, don't tell me you have forgotten about our anniversary. Realizing her lapse, she quickly apologized, explaining how she had remembered the anniversary 3 days ago but, in the rush of recent events, it had slipped her mind momentarily. Apologizing for her forgetfulness about their anniversary, Hee-woo was swiftly interrupted by Do-jun. With a mischievous glint in his eyes, he cut her off, suggesting an alternative way to apologize while maintaining eye contact. Caught in the moment, Hee-woo remembered their child and voiced her concern about the possibility of her standing up in an unfamiliar place and crying. Do-jun calmly reassured her that their baby was in good hands with her mom. He gently pointed out that he thought she needed some time alone when she visited, revealing his understanding nature. Realizing how he felt, Hee-woo tried to apologize, but Do-jun remained composed. Standing up, he held her hands, encouraging her to let go of the overwhelming responsibility of being a perfect parent. He reminded her that they couldn't do everything perfectly for little Do-jul and emphasized that their happiness was crucial for their baby's well-being. Reflecting on the past few days, he pointed out her lack of happiness and urged her to prioritize their own joy. His words triggered memories of the joyful moments they shared as a family. In a tender moment, Do-jun moved closer, expressing understanding of the challenges that come with the first year of parenthood. Encouraging her, he affirmed that she was doing great. The atmosphere shifted as he embraced her, lifting her in an intimate gesture. Morning arrives, and as Hee-woo wakes up in Do-jun's arms, a wave of warmth floods over her, reminiscent of the shared intimacy they once lost. They spend the morning side by side, engaged in easy conversation. In a moment of sheer bliss, Hee-woo finds herself uttering those 3 magical words, I love you, to which Do-jun responds in kind, expressing his love while they linger in the comfort of their bed. Do-jun, with a soothing tone, suggests extending their rest a bit longer. This simple proposition fills Hee-woo with indescribable emotions, a mix of relaxation and excitement. Playfully, he asks if she's not ready to doze off again. Though she declines, feeling it's too late, he holds her close, their connection palpable. As they transition to the dining room, Do-jun effortlessly carries her in his arms, an act that brings a childlike joy to Hee-woo. In this tender moment, she can't help but marvel at how he continually makes her fall in love, as if each encounter is a rediscovery of their initial meeting. With the awareness that it hasn't been too long since they tied the knot and welcomed their daughter into the world, Hee-woo's mind races through the memorable moments, from their first date to the time of their wedding, and the closeness they've shared in their relationship. However, a fleeting thought of their daughter's absence momentarily surfaces. Swiftly, she dismisses the thought, resolving to savor the present moment with Do-jun. In her heart, she acknowledges that their love is something sacred, a bond that only they can influence or compromise. Fast forward 7 years, the family is celebrating a joyous get-together, surrounded by relatives and friends. Laughter fills the air, and a heartfelt toast is raised, echoing the warmth of the occasion. Post-celebration, Hee-woo and Do-jun retreat indoors for a quiet moment. Hee-woo finds herself contemplating whether to pursue her PhD, unsure of the path ahead. A spontaneous decision takes her to check on their sleeping son. Do-jun, noticing her absence, questions her presence, and she playfully shares her admiration for their son's cuteness while asleep. Their conversation deepens, and Do-jun pulls Hee-woo into a warm embrace, expressing admiration for having such a beautiful wife by his side. The connection between them deepens, leading to an intimate moment. As the night continues, they capture the essence of this family gathering with a memorable group photo. Waking up to the soft light of the morning, Hee-woo finds Do-jun already awake and sitting on the bed. Playfully, she teases him about his early wake-up call, asking if he went for his workout routine. Do-jun responds with a grin, confirming that he did. He notices the amused look on her face and questions it, to which she charmingly attributes it to her still half-asleep appearance. As the morning unfolds, Do-jun, seemingly in a mischievous mood, attempts to take off his shirt. Hee-woo playfully halts his intentions, reminding him that it's too early for such activities. Nevertheless, he persists and guides her to the bathroom, where he dries her hair as she enjoys her morning tea. In their casual banter, Hee-woo expresses her fondness for the aroma of coffee. Their morning routine takes a surprising turn when Do-jun shares news about an arranged marriage ceremony they're invited to. He reveals that it involves the families of Assemblyman Young and Shin Young Group, a prominent financial entity ranked 7th globally. As they prepare for the arranged marriage ceremony, he drops a bombshell on Hee-woo, mentioning that the father of the lady he had a blind date with will be present at the event. Hee-woo, slightly shocked, asks if it's the same woman he got stuck in an elevator with. He clarifies that it's her father, not her. Hee-woo then playfully suggests putting makeup on, which he amusingly rejects, stating he prefers her without makeup. Curiosity getting the better of her, she digs into Do-jun's experience on the blind date. He initially attempts to deflect the conversation, likening her to his aunt, but Hee-woo insists on getting the details. She teases him, asking if he found the woman attractive, to which Do-jun, with a nonchalant tone, claims he was too busy to notice. However, Hee-woo playfully presses further, questioning if he was preoccupied thinking about another woman, perhaps an actress like Hayen. Do-jun denies any connection with Hayen and reluctantly shares a story about another date he had, arriving an hour late. He recounts how things didn't go as smoothly as he had hoped. In a flashback, Do-jun arrives at the venue but encounters a hiccup when asked for his identity card. Fumbling, he tries to explain to the receptionist that he's searching for someone and requests the membership list. The receptionist, sticking to protocol, refuses, citing privacy concerns. Undeterred, Do-jun decides to provide some description, painting a vivid picture of the person he's looking for. With enthusiasm, he describes her dark eyes, how she looks stunning in a black dress, and even likens her to a cat when serious but a puppy when she smiles. His detailed description catches the attention of someone nearby who chimes in, asking if he's lost his mind. Do-jun, feeling a bit defeated, decides to leave his contact number with the receptionist and apologizes for taking up her time. As he waits, the anticipation for a call is palpable, to the extent that even his driver starts questioning his sanity, seeing him continuously staring at his phone. Then, a reminder from his assistant about a blind date sparks a realization that he's running out of time. Swiftly, he instructs his assistant to park the car, planning to rendezvous with him in exactly 1 hour and 5 minutes. However, there's a catch: the cafe is on the 5th floor, and he finds himself on the 21st floor. Opting to walk rather than risk being late for the blind date, he contemplates the fleeting encounter with the mysterious woman who left him with bills and vanished. Reflecting on this brief encounter, Do-jun acknowledges the futility of chasing after someone who doesn't value him as much. Finally, he makes a decision to let go, realizing that this pursuit isn't serving him well, and he contemplates a shift in his perspective towards relationships with women. As the narrative unfolds, he finds himself at the cafe, spotting the woman he's been searching for. Approaching her, greetings are exchanged, and both introduce themselves. She commends him for his punctuality, leading to an engaging conversation where they gradually learn more about each other. Checking his watch, he realizes it's time for the next appointment. Courteously, he informs her of his impending commitment, preparing to take his leave. Surprisingly, the woman becomes upset, expressing frustration over the limited discussion. He reminds her of her dominant role in the conversation, yet she decides to accompany him. Walking out together, she holds onto his arm, apologizing for struggling with heels. Despite her apologies, his mind remains fixed on the elusive girl, overshadowing the unfolding events. In the midst of their departure, all that occupied Hee-woo's thoughts was the subtle touch she initiated on Do-jun, contemplating the implications of his reaction. The elevator, however, brought a sudden disruption to their musings, coming to an unexpected halt. Despite Hee-woo's attempts to contact maintenance, the response was less than satisfactory, leaving them in suspense. As the minutes turned to hours, Hee-woo found solace in sleep on Do-jun's shoulder, expressing her apprehension. Oblivious to her silent plea for comfort, Do-jun was immersed in his phone, seeking answers and resolutions. Frustration crept in for Hee-woo, leading her to confront him, declaring that she wasn't one to be trifled with. Do-jun, perplexed by the sudden shift in atmosphere, acknowledged her feelings. Attempting to return to the story, Hee-woo interrupted, her curiosity piqued. Inquiring about the mysterious lady, Do-jun evaded a direct response, choosing instead to embrace her. As he continued narrating, Hee-woo remained skeptical, prompting her to question if she had encountered him with Assemblyman Young's daughter. Confirming the encounter, Do-jun recounted a meeting 2 weeks prior, where a woman left him with bills and vanished, an incident etched vividly in his memory. On their way to the wedding ceremony, Do-jun couldn't resist asking Hee-woo about her reaction when she saw him. The atmosphere became charged as he pulled her into an embrace in the elevator, hinting at an intimate moment. The unfolding scene abruptly halted when the elevator doors swung open, revealing 2 unsuspecting men who tactfully averted their gaze, leaving Hee-woo feeling thoroughly embarrassed. Spontaneously, Do-jun proposed ditching the wedding in favor of a spontaneous date. This decision prompted a call to his boss, attempting to justify their absence. Unfortunately, the boss didn't take kindly to the unexpected change in plans, expressing frustration at the last-minute excuses. Undeterred, Do-jun and Hee-woo successfully extricated themselves from the wedding scenario, opting for an unplanned date instead. Venturing out for a shopping spree, Do-jun picked out a dress for Hee-woo, but she wasn't entirely thrilled with his choice, finding it not quite to her liking. Despite her reservations, he insisted she looked fantastic in it, offering sweet compliments. Not entirely convinced, Hee-woo decided to switch into another dress, seeking Do-jun's opinion once again. This time, his response was another positive yes, assuring her that the new dress suited her equally well. While browsing through the store, they encountered another couple who happened to be dressed impeccably. The chance encounter added an unexpected touch to their shopping adventure, offering a glimpse of how great couples could look in their chosen outfits. Decked out in their chosen outfits, Hee-woo and Do-jun decided to capture the moment with some couple photos. A kind lady noticed their desire for pictures and offered to play the role of the photographer. However, she mentioned that the photos might be featured in a magazine. Hee-woo, initially hesitant about being in the limelight, quickly declined, expressing her reluctance to be seen in a publication. After a bit of negotiation and understanding from both sides, they reached a compromise. The agreement was to take pictures without revealing their faces, ensuring a degree of privacy. During the photo session, Do-jun sparked a conversation by asking Hee-woo if she had ever been on television. This led to a discussion while they posed for several pictures, each shot capturing different postures and expressions. Back to the present, Do-jun sits down with Do-jul during dinner, offering some advice for the upcoming sports competition. He emphasizes the importance of remembering the techniques he taught her, counting down with her for emphasis. Do-jul, excited and focused, responds with determination, showcasing her eagerness to succeed. The family dinner takes a turn as Hee-woo shares her perspective, encouraging Do-jul to not just focus on the competition, but also on creating happy memories with friends. However, Do-jul is adamant about winning, especially against Jun-seo. Her competitive spirit is evident, and even her dad joins in, expressing confidence in their practice and the possibility of victory. The day of the sports competition arrives, and Do-jul, accompanied by her excited parents, heads to the venue. Instead of a friendly greeting, Jun-seo's dad mocks her, provoking a fiery response from Dujul. The tension escalates as both sets of parents engage in a heated argument over a bet. In the midst of the commotion, Juneseo's mother turns to Hiwoo, recounting the past incident where the kids ended up in tears. Juneseo's father has decided to let his son experience failure, hoping it will teach Dujul a valuable lesson about winning and losing. As the sports competition kicks off, Dujul finds herself in a tug-of-war match, where her strength, coupled with her team's effort, secures a victory. The basketball game follows, and Dujul receives support from her teammates, displaying teamwork and collaboration on the court. As the basketball game progresses with excitement and everyone enjoying the spirited competition, a sudden turn of events catches everyone's attention. Juneseo goes missing towards the end of the game, prompting Dujul to step in and try to find him. Concerned, Hiwoo approaches her daughter, asking if Juneseo mentioned anything before disappearing. Dujul, still caught up in the intensity of the game, replies with a no. Hiwoo, with a hint of worry, nods and allows her daughter to continue searching for Juneseo in the bustling event. The unexpected disappearance of Juneseo casts a shadow over the festive atmosphere, and the news reaches the concerned ears of the teacher. Approaching Hiwoo, the teacher reassures her that every possible measure has been taken to locate him, yet no leads have surfaced. The security cameras reveal nothing, intensifying the mystery surrounding Juneseo's whereabouts. Amidst the ongoing search, Dujul finds herself losing interest in the spirited games, her thoughts consumed by the absence of Juneseo. Her father notices the change and inquires about her reluctance to participate. With a resolute expression, she explains that she can't find the joy in playing without Juneseo's presence, emphasizing that winning feels incomplete without him by her side. In a sudden turn of events, Dujul's father suggests they go find Juneseo together. Heading to the school, they successfully locate him after a few anxious minutes. Curious, her father asks how she knew where to find him, to which she replies that she noticed him looking in that direction earlier. With a playful scolding, she tells him they still have a game to play, urging him not to hide away. In a candid conversation, Juneseo confesses that he hesitated because he didn't want to see Junjun cry like the last time. With a mix of determination and teasing, she calls him an idiot, expressing that she doesn't mind losing as long as he comes out to face her in the competition. Finally, the participants gather for the race, the excitement palpable in the air. As the race commences, Dujul takes the lead and emerges victorious, sealing the joyous family event on a high note. Kang Se-hyun, we're here, Jang Tae-woo announced as they drove, but mischievously she quipped, are you going to kiss me? His response was a cheeky pinch, reminding her of their pact to wake up early. I told you to wake up early, right? Get going before you'll be late, and pay attention in class, he advised, signing off with a casual, see you at the club. With a nod, she stepped into the school, contemplating the nature of their relationship. Is he her boyfriend, or does he play the role of a parent? The ambiguity perplexed her, especially considering the depth of her feelings for him. Recalling the time they spent preparing for college entrance exams, him dedicating over a year and her investing a year and a half, she couldn't help but feel a tinge of frustration that their relationship hadn't progressed as expected. Lost in thought, she entered the school compound, only to receive a text from Jang Tae-woo apologizing for the extended meeting. He suggested going to the coffee shop, attributing his busy schedule to a part-time job. The perpetual busyness of his life, she mused, sometimes made her feel like just the girl next door, yearning for a connection that went beyond the surface. Strolling around the school grounds, Kang Se-hyun bumped into her friend who couldn't help but sing praises for Tae-woo Sunbinim, acknowledging his academic assistance. The friend then probed into whether Kang Se-hyun felt insecure, considering the multitude of good-looking girls in the institution. In response, Kang Se-hyun chuckled, playfully mentioning that Sunbinim's heart was made of iron. However, her laughter subsided as she witnessed Tae-woo walking with another girl. They exchanged greetings and engaged in light conversation, with him casually referring to Kang Se-hyun as the girl next door. This innocuous comment triggered a wave of unease in Kang Se-hyun, fueling her insecurities and sparking thoughts of losing Sunbinim to someone else. Just when she was immersed in overthinking, Taewoo approached and informed her that it was time to head to the classroom for their project presentation. The project happened to be the final assignment for the first semester, and Kang Se-hyun found herself without a team to join. Taewoo, ever the considerate, invited her to join their group, to which she gladly agreed. As Se-hyun relaxes with her friends, enjoying drinks and snacks, she signals to her friend to top up her cup. Lost in thought about potential dangers even before speaking to Taewoo, a classmate remarks on Se-hyun's drinking prowess, to which she coyly responds, "I'm about to find out." Another classmate, overhearing, asks to join, and she welcomes him to their circle. Seated away from Taewoo, she notices his disapproval, prompting her to wonder why he cares since she's just the girl next door. As the group contemplates, Shara proposes a bottle game, and everyone enthusiastically agrees. Out of the blue, Shara fakes feeling dizzy, playfully asking Taewoo if she can borrow his shoulder. Without a response, she attempts to rest her head on him, causing him to stand up abruptly, and she ends up on the floor, leaving everyone surprised. In the midst of the commotion, Taewoo walks over to Se-hyun, who's still sipping her drink. He gently touches her cheek, commenting on her red face, hinting at a potential state of inebriation. Just as they're having this exchange, Taewoo's friend advises him not to let Se-hyun drink anymore, prompting them to call it a night. As they hop into the car, Se-hyun, already dozing off, rests her head on Taewoo's shoulder. The car ride home is filled with sleepy silence, and upon arrival, they engage in a brief conversation. Out of the blue, Se-hyun surprises Taewoo by asking, "Why haven't you been kissing me lately?" Flashback to a couple days before, Taewoo pulls up to Se-hyun's place, and she expresses gratitude for the ride home. He casually mentions they'll catch up over the weekend since she mentioned taking on a part-time job this week. Before she heads inside, he assures her he'll give her a call. In the comfort of her room, Se-hyun, still tinged with a blush, can't help but replay the moment in her mind. She sprawls out on her bed, musing about the upcoming weekend. Unable to contain her excitement, she engages in a lively chat with her friends on her phone. The setting switches to their school, where the next day everyone is grouped for different tasks. Se-hyun finds herself in the cleaning group with her friend. While they scrub away, the conversation naturally drifts to Taewoo. Her friend, sensing something amiss, nudges Se-hyun to spill the beans about how she's feeling and how she wished to be closer to him. Se-hyun, with a nonchalant smile, dismisses the idea of chasing after men, stating matter-of-factly that Taewoo was the one who confessed his feelings to her. A short while later, Se-hyun finds herself in the laundry room, occupied with her own tasks, when Shara strolls in on the lookout for Taewoo's assistance in taking out the clothes. Se-hyun, being the helpful soul, offers her assistance, but Shara insists that she and Taewoo have it covered. Undeterred, Se-hyun persists in convincing her otherwise. Amidst the banter, Shara playfully teases Se-hyun, questioning if she's dating Taewoo and whether she's in the habit of fending off other girls vying for his attention. Shara throws in her 2 cents, stating that Se-hyun and Taewoo don't seem compatible and don't exude the aura of a couple in love. Enough is enough for Se-hyun, and she fires back, revealing that it wouldn't change even if Shara knew Taewoo doesn't care about her. She bluntly adds that no matter how hard Shara tries, her boyfriend won't come back. The laundry room echoes with a sudden shift in the atmosphere, leaving the two in a tense moment of truth. In walks Taewoo, curious about Se-hyun's arrival. She casually informs him that she just got there and sweetly asks for his help. As she starts to walk, a rogue laundry basket becomes her unexpected nemesis, causing her to stumble precariously. In the blink of an eye, Taewoo springs into action, swiftly catching her, and the two of them end up on the floor. Se-hyun, recovering from the near tumble, looks up at Taewoo with gratitude, offering a heartfelt thanks for his timely rescue. However, as she gazes into his eyes, her thoughts take a detour into the realm of fantasies involving him. Taewoo, concerned, queries about her leg and playfully chides her for being so careless. In a surprising turn, he gently holds her hands, genuinely asking if she's hurt anywhere. Annoyed by the unexpected tenderness, Se-hyun snaps at him to let go, her frustration evident. Without a moment's hesitation, she darts away, leaving Taewoo bewildered in her wake. As Taewoo puzzles over the abrupt departure, he wonders if Se-hyun's hasty exit is fueled by embarrassment over the impromptu floor rendezvous. In the current moment, Se-hyun confronts Taewoo, questioning why he no longer kisses her. She wonders aloud if he even sees her as his girlfriend, especially since he claimed he couldn't see anyone else but her, and she's noticed a change in him. Exasperated, she declares she doesn't want to care anymore. As Taewoo gently caresses her chin, a surprising twist unfolds. He leans in and plants a kiss on her lips. The unexpected kiss lingers in the air as he confesses that he still misses her. Se-hyun's mom makes an entrance, checking in on her daughter and receiving a reassuring response. Grateful, she extends her thanks to Taewoo for safely bringing Se-hyun home. Taewoo, in turn, tells Se-hyun's mom that she should take care of her daughter and casually mentions he'll give Se-hyun a call the next day. The following morning, Se-hyun wakes up with a start, gripped by a momentary terror. She reassures herself that it's just a dream, but her calm is interrupted by an incoming call. On the other end is the caller, inquiring about her well-being and suggesting she swing by his place later. He mentions wanting the shirt he lent her yesterday and hints at having something important to share. Later in the morning, Se-hyun heads to Taewoo's house, where he turns out to be the mysterious caller. Handing him his shirt, she steps inside and can't help but notice the impeccable cleanliness of the place. With a playful tone, she quips about whether he cleaned up just because she was coming. Taewoo responds cryptically, stating that it depends on her interpretation, and casually instructs her to wait for him on the sofa. He returns and joins her on the sofa, admitting he's still pondering what she shared the day before. Taewoo then surprises her with a small box containing a cute ring. Perplexed, she questions its purpose, and he reveals that they are on the brink of celebrating their second anniversary, gifting her the ring as a token of his affection. Expressing his genuine feelings, he confesses how much he likes her and reassures her that he won't change. With a tender touch, he takes her hands, delicately placing the ring on her finger, emphasizing that his love for her will endure. Apologizing for any sadness he caused, he opens up about his reluctance to kiss her earlier. Explaining that a simple kiss could lead to something more, he attempts to maintain some distance. However, Se-hyun takes the lead, pulling him in for a kiss. She playfully asserts that he'll have to take responsibility for her from now on, leading to a more intimate connection between them. Days later, within the school corridors, Taewoo affectionately holds Se-hyun and kisses her head. Shara, witnessing their cozy display, can't help but feel a tinge of jealousy. The school days unfold with a newfound warmth in Se-hyun and Taewoo's relationship, leaving Shara to navigate her own emotions amidst the evolving dynamics of friendship and love. With this, our beautiful story comes to an end. Please drop a comment if you enjoyed this wholesome story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, ciao.